And what I'd like to say is this presentation is dedicated to all our Norway House Cree Nation members who we lost to violence and substance misuse here in Norway House, Winnipeg, and elsewhere. They're never forgotten because, you know, when we lose a member, we lose somebody from our family, and I think of Norway House as a big family. And we got to think that way again. So, Tansei, welcome to the speaking series, Walking as One. I'm very honored to be back home in my beautiful community of Kiniseo CP and paying it forward to the people who truly are the backbone of our community. And that is you, the frontline workers and the essential workers of Norway House. I really mean that because what you do is such hard work, and it's a burden that we take because it's really, really tough work. I got some ladies that I just finished talking to, are colleagues of mine for many, many years, who I really admire their hard work and dedication. And I see a lot of young people here today. And I'm really happy to see that because they're going to be the next generation that wants to make change, that wants to say, you know what, I want a better community. I want a better community for our kids. So I welcome you guys all here. This partnership I created 3 long years ago with Corey, I mentioned that already. And what Corey always says is we're all in this together. And that's why Corey, when he does come here and does back-to-back presentations today, he'll speak to that. Corey got into so much problems within his own organization because even the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service of Winnipeg got into trouble because one of the firefighters saw a homeless Indigenous man in Winnipeg. I don't know if you saw that newspaper clip. He kind of propped him up and put his arm around him and said, took a picture of that, and he said, I made a friend today. Basically making fun of this person who was obviously intoxicated and homeless. And that just pisses Corey off. And I'm sorry about using that language, but Corey got irate with his organization and said, how are we, as frontline workers and responders, can say that we're doing our job and we're treating people that way? So that's what I mean about the importance of this presentation and this partnership is to break those barriers. So, my part of the presentation is focused on the substances which are used to cope with the trauma due to colonization, assimilation, residential schools, intergenerational trauma, and the 60s scoop. I'll use my personal stories as examples of what we're dealing with. See, my kids are the 4th generation. My grandmother, her name was Louisa Hall from Norway House. Her daughter, Dorothy Wesley, who was my mother, and my siblings. I got 2 older siblings here now, Kathy Wienis and Doreen Godwin. They're my older siblings. So what happened when my mother was taken away from Norway House at 10 years old is devastating to her family. My grandmother started drinking after that. And when my mom did 9 years in Bertel Residential School, she never talked about it. I don't know what happened, and I never will, because she even said to my older sisters who are passed on now, don't ask me questions about it. I don't want to talk about it. That's how much pain that she had inside as a young person. My mother never made it back to Norway House, and she always talked about that, my sister said, one day I'll make it home. But unfortunately, in 1976, my mother died of alcohol poisoning in the streets of Winnipeg. And I still have to deal with that trauma today. That's 46 years later. So after that happened, intergenerational trauma, me and my siblings. We all became alcoholics at one point in our life and started using as well, some of us. So it goes from colonization, residential school, intergenerational trauma, and then it came to the 60s scoop. So this has affected my family, and it still does. I'm recently, dealing with some more trauma. I lost 2 family members in my life within the past year. And, these are young, beautiful people that had their whole life ahead of them. And that's something I have to speak to because I never want people to forget who they were. And I'm still dealing with that. And the way I cope with these with these tragedies and traumas in my life is I share. I share to people, and I'm glad I'm sharing with my people of Norway House, because everybody understands what these traumas are. And now that this is fresh, and I'm still dealing with some trauma, my brother, who everybody knows in this room, and his wife are struggling big time in Winnipeg right now because of the loss that they suffered. And you know, this is where it comes back home, and there's a correlation here I want everybody to remember. And I'm just speaking from our community, from Winnipeg to Norway House, there's a big loop there. And that loop of drugs and alcohol and people coming to our community thinking they have the right to come here and sell this poison, this garbage. They're not even Cree Nation members. They come here and they think it's okay. But we're here to say that's not okay, because it's causing a lot of damage. And we have to make sure that we stand up together and say, Agane, enough is enough. So like I said, right now, my brother, I don't know what's going to happen. I tried to reach out and help them, and I can't physically take them and throw them into a recovery center. They have to want that. But it's so hard. How do you deal with that kind of a loss? So, you know, and the reason why I share these really, really personal stories, like I said, I want you to know that this is real, and I know what I'm talking about when I'm talking about our community, our losses, and what's continuing in our community. Okay, and I said already that I'm going to talk about, you know, residential school, assimilation, intergenerational trauma. And I'm going to talk about this one right here, alcohol and the negative effects on our children, families, and community. Alcohol has been around forever. We know that. You know, a lot of our grandparents and everything used to, you know, drink. But believe it or not, alcohol is the #1 drug and substance that destroyed us as Indigenous people on this continent. Just going back 300 years, we have lost over 10 to 15 million Indigenous people in the US and in Canada because of colonization and the introduction of alcohol. Alcohol is not only something that has done damage to us for all these centuries, it's still doing damage to us today. And like I said, I see a lot of our people still coping, and that's a coping mechanism. How do we hide that pain? How do we hide this trauma that we have in our hearts? And I'm not talking as a collective, I'm talking as individuals. We all have our stories. We all have our own personal trauma that we carry around. And that's something that we have to remember, and you have to spread that knowledge on to people. And there's another point that I wanted to talk about is mental health concerns within our community. We need more training, and we need more staffing. Because when we have mental health crisis in our communities, we don't have the resources to ship everybody to Winnipeg or where they need to go immediately. So we have to look at that as a community and say that's one of our asks, is that we have a center and proper funding and staffing for our mental health crisis team, that we can get our members help immediately. They can't wait for 3 months. When somebody's having an episode, they need that help immediately. And our staff are overworked. Our staff are really, really trying to do the best that they can with, you know, putting people and putting on the dotted line of trying to get people into treatment centers and facilities. Sometimes it's a 6-month wait, maybe longer. Am I right? So how do we look at that, and how do we say as a community we need to change that? Well, we start today. After this session is over, we can keep that communication going. And of course, domestic violence, alternatives to violent outcomes, prevention. Domestic violence is still alive and well. It's not just, like I said, it's not just here, it's everywhere. Because of COVID, because of other situations of our people being shut down in their homes, this has made everything tenfold of what I'm talking about already. We're just getting out of COVID now. We're trying to get our our footing back as a community. We're kind of having gatherings again, which is really nice. But I just heard the news yesterday that Manitoba has the highest cases of COVID again. So COVID is alive and well, and it's making its presence here. And I know that really sucks to hear that, but that's a reality. And people are saying now, if you go out somewhere, try to continue to use caution. Because in Winnipeg, they're getting a big spike of COVID, and it's going to happen. It's going to come to our communities again. So we already know that our workers prepared us for that. So let's just keep, do our due diligence and keep our eyes open and do our part by continuing to wash our hands using, disinfectant. And if you think you need to wear a mask, go ahead. But that's something that's happening now. So how do we become more inclusive when it comes to working together in a collaborative way? How do we become more inclusive when we're talking to become a Norway House, stronger Norway House Cree Nation organization for the well-being of our members today and tomorrow? Who knows what I'm talking about when I say, how do we become more inclusive? Does anybody have a guess what that means? Okay. Anyways, well, we'll get you guys involved. Don't worry. Inclusive means how do we together start communicating? Let's look at these tables that are around us, and let's say that these are all the divisions within Norway House. And I need help from this side of the table, and I have to go and ask help at the other end of that table. To be more inclusive means that we have to have better communication right from our social services for our people, to health, to the child family, right to our first responders, to our community wellness workers, right to our leadership. And we can become more inclusive. We have to break down the barriers that are there, and we have to start working as community members and family members. That's the mentality we have to take. Because right now, I can tell you, and everybody knows this, that we're having some issues with that communication. A lot of people aren't working together. A lot of people are doing finger pointing. A lot of people in our community are saying this division or that division are not doing their part. And I've been talking to hundreds of people since I've been back, and that's true. And that's why this talk is so important. It all encompasses what we're doing here today. So, we're going to have other workshops just on inclusiveness. We're going to bring people together so we can start having these discussions and work together. Like, say I get a phone call today, I have myself. I need social assistance. I need some medical help. It shouldn't take a week or two to get those things done. That person should phone this person right away, and we should be involved that way. We should have direct connections with other divisions to make these things happen. And I'm not saying they don't. Of course they do. But like I said, we can do things in a better way. We have to look at how our programming is now and how can we reconstruct that overall healthcare in our community and make it better. Okay, so this is a metaphor that I used, and I mentioned a lot of stuff, that the trauma that I've been carrying and dealing with over the years. I want to tell the young people here that don't know, and maybe some of the other people don't know. When I first came to Norway House 25 years ago to stay, I wasn't a well man. I was still using, I was still drinking, and I didn't have an education. So what I'm saying today is everything that I am today, my education, my part in leadership, working through KSMA and working as a NADAP worker, education, social, everything I've done was because of you people in Norway House. So we can do it. And I'm very proud to say that I've done it here at home. The education piece and everything, it's because of the leadership. It's because of the NADAP workers that worked with me back then. We have to know that we can do it. We can do anything we set our sights to. And I can just imagine, I was talking to somebody yesterday about that. I said, I can't even imagine if I never made it home, would I even be alive today? Maybe I would have been another statistic on the streets of Winnipeg. And I can honestly say that. So I'm very fortunate and blessed to call Norway House my home. And I thank you all for your part, your organization's part in helping me through all of that. So here's my metaphor that I use now. I say let's flip the script on colonization and all the traumas we're carrying as individual Indigenous people. Whatever your story is and whatever you're feeling inside, here's how I deal with that, and it worked for me. Okay, my metaphor is instead of carrying all these traumas, and you can follow along here, and I'm right over here, in our lives, which make it hard to breathe or even live for that matter. And I mentioned that colonization. I mentioned assimilation. I mentioned residential schools, intergenerational. We as individuals carry that every day in our hearts, you know? So we have to do that. Let's stop carrying these burdens and using all sorts of self-destructing coping mechanisms such as alcohol, drugs, even sex, violence, just to name a few. Let's start with flipping the weight of colonization from our backs. And I'm speaking as an individual, from our backs, our souls, and our hearts, our minds, and our spirit. Let's metaphorically throw that we all carry as individuals. Enough of carrying that through our lives and always trying to make things better. Let's throw that on the ground, metaphorically speaking, of course. Okay, let's throw it at our feet and then step on it. Now we own it and take control of our healing journey in a way never thought possible. And once you do that, when you carry that pain and burden and you throw that on the floor and you step on it, now you can move freely. You can say, I need help. I need this in my life. I'm not afraid to talk about it. I'm not afraid to mention the traumas or what's still affecting me or maybe my family. And I just mentioned a lot of my personal stuff, and that is enough to squash anybody or put out anybody's fire, but I refuse to let that happen because of what I've learned here in my own community and from people that are sitting around here. Suddenly we are controlled to move and move freely, knowing and overseeing changing our narrative in our personal lives. This thought process, this metaphor has saved my life, and I thank God for that. I thank the Creator for that. Because if you understand what I'm saying, you know, who doesn't come, you know, sometimes when you have a little bit of pain in your heart, we lost a loved one, we're dealing with some issues ourselves, you know, that's trauma. And that's all intergenerational trauma, believe it or not, of what happened to us in this country. And we as individuals have to do it individually. We have to change ourselves. I'd love to say we all can do it today and all do it together, but we can't. We just have to work at it one day at a time. So this leads us into the conversation of social determinants within our community. Because of the topics I mentioned, which fall under the umbrella of social determinants, within most, if not all, First Nations community within Canada. So on top of all of these things I've been mentioning from colonization, now we're talking about social determinants within our community. We as Indigenous people are lacking in dollars. We're lacking in support from the federal government and the provincial government. We're lacking in many, many ways. And these social determinants, let's just paint a picture here. We have a house somewhere in Norway House. There's overcrowding, which we know is a real issue in our community, and we're looking at that today, trying to, find some new solutions for that. But when I'm talking about social determinants, we have a 2-bedroom house, and we have 7 kids in the house, parents, maybe an uncle, and there's no water and sewer pickup, so the kids, the clothes aren't clean. The kids miss 2 days of school a week because of that. And then you put that through the month, so that's 8 days of school a month. So you're talking almost 2 months out of the school year that a child is missing school because of the lack of water and sewer pickup, because we're growing so fast in our community that we're not getting the proper funding to make up for that need. And social determinants become in every factor of who we are in this community, right from when we're born how we're raised, how our school, and how things progress through adulthood. That's what the social determinants are, excuse me. So if everybody can understand that, the question now becomes, how do we as a community move forward? So after hearing all these kind of things, if you have a pen and paper, write some stuff down, write some ideas and some questions, because we'll be talking about these things eventually. How do we move forward as a community? The answer to this question is a complex one and has no easy answer, and must be worked on differently in each First Nation community, as we all are unique in language, our culture, religion, and in a geographical sense. Some of our First Nation communities are 45 minutes away from all the resources in Winnipeg, and they can transfer their people a little bit easier. But we got inland communities that sometimes have to wait for days for a medevac flight. And all of these kind of differences that we have to look in a geographical sense, that's what I'm talking about. So when we look at it that way, so is it unity? Is it trust? Is it confidentiality or respect? Believe it or not, it's all of the above. Because when we as a community, where am I going here? Sorry. We become stronger, Norway's organization and well-being for our members today and tomorrow. Just bear with me, I'm trying to get all these slides in the right order here. So what do all these issues have in common? Well, it all starts with the devastation of colonization, the settlement of Canada, the assimilation, the integration of our people into a society that was never built for us and we don't fit into. Misrepresentation, falsification of who we are as Indigenous people. That propaganda has been going on for 300 years. And it started in the US, and that justified them to take over our lands and push us onto First Nation communities and reserves. That falsification of we don't know anything. We're not good enough to run our own land. And that's what happened over the last 300 years. And that's why you see America and Canada the way it is today. And our First Nations that we have within Canada. And oppression, of course. Oppression, I wrote the other terms to that. The cruelty at residential schools, the cruelty that we're still feeling today from the medical session of Canada, the oppression and the cruelty we're still feeling today within our inner cities and environments. And our people, Indigenous communities, which has led us to ongoing self-destruction we now see today. And in many cases, we've become a reactive community instead of a proactive one in almost all aspects of programming and care, which is no fault of our own, because if you hear exactly what I'm saying here, we're trying to do the best we can every day. Something new comes up, a new response, a very critical situation that's affecting our community, and then we respond to that. I think from a lot of these lessons that we've had in the last few decades, we can come back together in another workshop and say, how do we become a proactive community? And I tell you that we're doing that right now. By you being here today and getting this information, you're basically saying to yourself, okay, next time something comes up, we're prepared for it. We already have something in place, we roll it out right away. And that's part of the proactive part of what we're doing as a community. And Chief and Council are setting that wheel in motion now by having workshops and opening it up to the public and saying we all have a say in how this community is going to be run, and we all have a say in how our programming is going to be structured for the betterment of our people. Okay, our people, Indigenous communities live in its ongoing self-destruction. Today we've become, and I did that already, healthcare, education, and leadership, we all must take responsibility for the current state of our community, which I talked about already. One recommendation will be creating a Norway House Cree Nation Action Community Committee. For example, I put up there CARE. This is just an example, and it stands for Community Advocacy, Revisiting Community Engagement. This would be a continuous working document that will continue to grow as our community's needs grow. We can get a person who hand selects this group. They will come from all departments and have a community member at large. And what I mean by that is we pick somebody from the community who's active, that's doing things and knows what's the issues in our community, and that person sits on that board automatically as a member at large, because it's so important to hear from our community what we're trying to do for our people. This selection will not be biased. We're going to get the best people, and whoever wants to volunteer for this committee, this is just an example, who comes forward. It's not going to be biased saying, oh, I don't want that person because they have different views. I don't want that person because they work over there. I want the best people who want to work and share their knowledge for the betterment of our community. I want the people that's in this committee to see and know and talk truthfully and honestly about the real issues out there. We can't sugarcoat this stuff. We have to get down to the nitty-gritty, because if we don't, we're never going to start dealing with that. So anyways, this election, like I said, will come from professionals who must work together with respect and confidence, because it's not about us. It's about the well-being of our community members of Norway House, who need to feel safe and have the confidence to reach out at any time. And I know there's cases out there where some people don't want to go and reach out their hand and saying, I got an issue with substances, alcohol, spousal abuse, all these kind of issues. Some people don't want to do it because they're worried that it's going to get out there in the community. And that's another fact. We have to start closing that and becoming a better overall system. Because when our people are scared of the lack of confidentiality, then we're in trouble. Because we're not getting people coming into the departments to get the help that they need, meaning that they're still out there and they're dealing with this trauma on their own, using substances and maybe becoming violent, and all because they don't want to come and seek out help because they're worried they're going to get pointed at. You know, and that's why I'm sharing all this stuff, is because you can't be afraid to do that. I raise my hand even today when I'm in seminars and questioning. I'm learning every day. And if you take that mentality to anywhere you go, you're going to be a better person for that, because none of us know what's going to happen tomorrow. But we can sure learn something today that can help us prepare for tomorrow. Am I right? So that's a lot of the issues that I'm talking about. And I think that this new committee that can be formed in our community is going to be a beautiful one. You know, and there's going to be, of course, naysayers, and that's another thing. We heard this before. We have committees up the yin-yang. You know, what's this one going to do now instead of the other committees? But we never talked about these open issues as we're doing today. We're not bringing the reality home. We're not talking about these issues that no one wants to talk about. We're bringing it in the open now, because we can't afford to lose another community member. We can't afford to lose a young person that needs that help, that wants that help, that can succeed tomorrow. That's the ones we have to reach. And there's a lot of them out there, I can tell you. I'm going to share another story. I was in my office yesterday, and a young man comes into my office I never seen for a long time. I worked with this young man since he was 12 years old, when I used to work as an EA at the old Rossville school. And I worked with this young man. I seen him grow, and I seen him have some issues, but he's still in our community, and he still needs our support. And he was talking to me, and he's a grown man now. This is like 20 years ago. But he's still saying, you know what, no one wants to hire me because of, they think I'm this, they think I'm that. And that broke my heart, because, you know, this young man was sitting in front of me, and I still seen that little boy inside of him that didn't get that proper start. He didn't get that encouragement and all that he should have had. But I told him that I'll try to help him again, and we'll try to see if we can make a change in his life. And you know what? When you do that act of kindness in our community, I'm always trying to, you know, share a smile or a laugh with everybody, or buy him a coffee, open a door. That is infectious when you do that. Because when you say hi to somebody and somebody has a good laugh, they have a better day. And I know that for a fact. And you know, and that's a beautiful thing when we share that. We're we're a people who like sharing stories and like having some laughs, and that's part of the healing process too. Okay, so let's never forget, I'm going to talk about some of our community members and in a personal way. Let's never forget our members, and it's right on top of the next slide, who fall into the category of missing, murdered, Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited, and missing and murdered Indigenous men. The ones who got swallowed up by the cities of Canada, who transitioned from their First Nation community to the city. This is not just a Manitoba story, this is a story right across Canada. They're having marches everywhere, Vancouver to Halifax. So why is this still happening? And there's a couple of major answers to that. One is Canada and a lot of the people that live in the cities in the south don't know or care about who we are. They just think of us as Indians on the res. That's all they think about when they see us. And that's why when we go to the cities, we're not respected, we're not acknowledged that way. And when we have our First Nation community members, and I've seen for myself when I was doing work at Siloam Mission, I had a couple of community members that came up to me right away. Hey, Gilbert, how's it? You know, so that's a reality that we have to look at too, is anybody can go anywhere you want, that's true. But when we're not ready and we transition to the city doesn't care. The city and the economic machine that's Canada goes 24 hours, 365. They don't care if you don't have a place to stay. That system is made for Canadian Europeans that built this country. Not even a mention of us, because they took our lands and put us on First Nation communities, which were called reserves, right? Okay, so what I'm alluding to is our First Nation men, women, families, and two-spirited who leave their First Nation community for the city, and in most cases are not prepared, as what I spoke to. Many times it's right to the social departments for help in the inner city, central, north end, Point Douglas area, where gangs, addictions, violence becomes their escapes. Also, in many cases, prostitution becomes a reality because of drug abuse, poverty, homelessness, and other social factors. All of these things we probably know about already. We know that, like I said, there's lots of our Indigenous brothers and sisters from all different communities that are lost in the inner city. Vancouver, Calgary, Winnipeg, Saskatoon, you name it. And it's still happening, and we're having a more and more higher rate of our people going missing or even murdered in this country. And it has to do, and the reason why I'm putting it in categories like this, because it has to do with everything I talked about from the beginning of Canada in 1867, wanted no part of us. They basically wanted to run this country, get all the resources, the land, and as long as we stayed out of the way, that was good enough. But now it's becoming a real issue, and we have to address it. And I spoke about this to a Grand Chief already, saying that these issues have to be addressed in a better way. Okay, where am I here? Okay, because major cities across Canada have workers, businesses, and systems in place that waits for no one. Just bear with me here, sorry, I'm just trying to figure out exactly where here I am. Okay, many times it's right to the inner city departments, which I talked about. Businesses and systems in place that have, and it waits for no one. And most business owners, along with most of the general public who live in these cities, don't care or have any realization about First Nation people who struggle in society, or why our current state within Canada as such as it is today. And I just talked about many, many points that we all can talk about with that statement alone. I've personally seen this over my years of living in Winnipeg and working in Winnipeg. One major factor is that Canada has been building this economic growth with European Canadians since 1867, Confederation, while First Nation people were disbanded and put on the reservation, hopefully to vanish into the history books. When they did that, they didn't think we were going to survive. They thought we were going to die off. And how wrong they were. We are still here today. Within the last 60 years or so, First Nation people started finding their way to the cities and seeing if they were part of this new system. And we all know the question to that as I've been talking to. Today in 2022, we as First Nation people are kicking down barriers and announcing to Canada that we're still here and we're not going anywhere. So work with us in establishing a Canada which acknowledges that we are the first peoples of this land, and it's time for Canada to respect us and the treaties that were signed in good faith with the Crown. And I'm talking about our Treaty 5. If you guys don't know what Treaty 5 is, our young people, look that up. It's very important. The time for us is now as First Nation people to say enough of the land stealing along with the resources, and for First Nation people to become partners in this tripartite Canada, which is Indigenous, French, and English, which would be the foundation of true reconciliation. We missed this opportunity at Canada 150. Do you remember at Canada 150 when they announced Canada, the English Canada, and the French Canada basically were having partners in this country? Phil Fontaine told me when I was talking to him, we missed our opportunity at Canada 150 to say to Canada, what about us? We are true partners in this country and we have to be acknowledged. And we missed that. So I'm hoping that we can build up momentum for Canada 200 and make sure that's in our Constitution. Because until that day comes, we're still going to be dealt with in a way that they look at us as children of the ward of the state. French and English and the foundation of Canada 150 and our GDP, Canada has the third highest total estimated value, of natural resources in the world, valued at $33.98 trillion in 2020. If we as First Nation people had access just to 3% of that gross domestic product, and the reason why I'm talking to this will all make sense when I conclude, is that Canada is the third richest country in the world with our resources. Gold, silver, everything that comes out of this land of Canada, we should have equal say to that money. Not waiting for government to throw us money all the time and saying, oh, we're taking care of you guys are doing good, don't worry about nothing, we'll give you more money. If we keep that trend up, we're never going to break free from that colonial cycle. We need to be our own people. So we can build our own healthcare, schooling, housing that works and fits for our people and our community's needs, not somebody saying this is better for you. We have to say that. And that's the way we'll take pride in our own destiny and not feeling like wards of the state or children of the crown, which we still are. Canada looks at us like that, like they're taking care of us like we're children. And I say enough of that. That's an insult, and it's time to change that. It's time for our own destiny. Because our people feel like everything from first breath to death has been and is dictated from Canada, and that's not self-determination or reconciliation, that's oppression, persecution, and that's in its blatant form. So everything that I was talking about in my presentation coincides with Corey's presentation. So basically what I was trying to build a picture here with my presentation of history of Canada, colonization, assimilation, residential schools. It all comes down as burdens onto each one of us trying to move forward. And there's a lot of young people that are here in our community and right across Canada and First Nations that don't understand this. They're becoming normalized to what they're living with now. They don't know any of this history, and we have to make sure that we teach this history to our young people, because the history that we're learning in the schools doesn't reflect on anything that I'm talking about. It doesn't have that respect to say that who we are as First Nation people. I remember looking at a textbook at an Indigenous person. It was titled, and this was when I was maybe 10 years old. I looked at this textbook, and there was a person with long hair covering their face with a stick, digging it into the ground. Basically, that's how we're portrayed in a lot of this history. And we know that's not true. We have many, many brilliant people in our communities, even here today, and our young people, and our people that have been serving our community for all their lives. And we got to change that. So instead of taking the norm and saying, okay, yeah, let's learn this, let's learn that, our Cree language, like Councillor Swanson always says, our Cree language and our culture and our heritage is the most important thing that we have to give our young people. Because if they don't have that, in these generations, we're losing it. We're already losing our language right across this country. And I honor Councillor Swanson for always pushing that agenda, because it's so true. I lost my language. I know a few words, but they're really bad and I don't want to say them. But I'm trying to pick up some of my Cree as I go along. But, you know, a lot of our people and our young people don't know how to speak our language. And then I got my grandchildren who are trying to learn Cree, and one of them, all he says to me all the time is, "Awas, awas." So he's learning, but he's trying to be bad, I guess, just like his mom. But that concludes my part of this presentation. I'm going to call up Mr. White to come in and say a few words from the RCMP. And what I'm going to finally say here is that I hope all this information that we got starts changing a little bit of the narrative. The narrative of thinking outside the box. Thinking outside, what can we do better? Any idea is better. We can always come up with solutions, and I'm hoping that when we go forward, if they want to set up this new committee, that would be a great thing. And I think that, like I said, there's a lot of committees that have been formed before, but I think that this one is going to be a little bit different because, as you can see here, it's community advocacy, revisiting community engagement. So we're basically saying we need to change and have the engagement, our people. We have a say in it. Everybody has a say of how our health and our education is done. I want to speak to a little bit about what's happening. I know everybody came here for the presentation with Corey about the drugs and everything like that. I can speak to a little bit of that. What Corey is telling me, and in his presentations, that the drugs that they're seeing in Winnipeg now are methamphetamines. Everybody knows what, and that's here in Norway House already. Let's not deny it. It's been here for a few years. There's people using meth, and right now there's a new meth that's coming out, and it's already in the prairies, and it's going to be here soon, so we better be ready. This meth is like a super meth. When they take this, they automatically fall into a psychosis. They become violent, and they hallucinate, and anything can happen. I seen a couple of people in Winnipeg that were running around in their underwear with a hammer, running after people. See, and these kind of drugs, in Winnipeg, they can find solutions and find help for them right away. But if this comes to our community, we're not prepared. We're not ready for that. We're overwhelmed as it is. We're not ready for that. And there's a new drug that's been killing a lot of people that is going to make its way here. It's called Down. And I've been talking about this drug called Down for a few days already. It killed a lot of our Indigenous people in Winnipeg. There was a father who lost his wife and his daughter to this drug. It's a mixture of heroin and fentanyl. And this is in a pill form. They can smoke it, they can inject it. And these are the things that, if this comes to our community and our young people are taking these substances without understanding what they are, they can drop dead immediately. And that's the seriousness that what we have to talk about. I don't want to stop, not talking about these issues. The only way we're going to tackle it is to bring it out. Bring it out to a community level, talk about it, let our leaders know that what they're informed, and I'm happy I'm working with the leadership and bringing these important information sessions to our community. And I tip my hat to them for that. And I'm going to keep talking about it. I don't care if people say I'm sick of Fredette talking about it. You know what? Because once we stop talking, it becomes a normality again. It means that we accept it. Oh, it's here, we can't do nothing about it. Forget it. Because it's too important. I lost family members, and I'm telling you, I don't want anybody to feel the way I feel in my heart because of losing family members, because of drugs and other, unforeseen, how would you say that? Like suicide and attempted suicide. These are really tough issues, but we have to, and I'm glad we're doing the right thing. We're starting that conversation, and we're going to have another presentation, and this time I'm going to bring this gentleman here the day before, but he could not come yesterday because he is so swamped with all his presentations that he had in Winnipeg till 6 o'clock. That's how much this guy is sought after all over the place. They want his information because people are learning. So let me just check the messages here. Does anybody have any questions before I get Mr. White to come up and say a few words? Does anybody have any questions about what's going on? What do you need to know a little bit more about? Just let me know. And Corey's on his way, so he is definitely going to be here for a presentation. Excellent. So that means there's going to be back-to-back presentations today. It's going to be a little late, but he asked me when he got off the plane this morning, he said, Gilbert, do I still come? I said, absolutely. I don't care if you get here at noon. I want the information here, and I want it recorded, and I want our people to watch this and understand the importance of what's happening in our community. Anybody have any questions? Anything about the topics I talked? Yes.
We started a networking committee already, and there's all the departments attending, even RCMP, the band constables, and chief and council members sometimes attend when they're in the community. So we do have that already started, just for you to know.
Okay. Okay, great. And I'm really happy that you said that. So hopefully I can get an invitation to this committee, and I'd be honored to help out and come and talk about what I know, and that's great. And so it's a mixture of everybody in the community, and the chief and council are involved. That's fantastic. Anybody else have a question of anything that we're talking about? Don't be afraid to answer. Oh, there's one. Right.
Hello.
Hello.
Hi, my name is April Osborne. I work at the Health and Community Wellness at the Health Division. I had a episode or experience of when somebody needs to go to detox right away, that we had roadblocks, like we couldn't get forward to that. And it was kind of frustrating for the person too, and frustrating for the worker. And it was kind of scary too, because that is a life and death situation of somebody withdrawing. And we didn't have they needed to go there right away, because they know that the beds are, once you're got a bed, you got to get there right away. So this person had to go through medical service because of they wanted to see if they can get on a plane to get there right away, right? And that was hard because they needed certain paperwork, which we had, but then they wanted more paperwork, which we didn't have, because we were hoping when she got into that place that it will work out. But then anyways, we end up driving her down to that detox center, for women's detox center, and that long ride of 8 hours. I took her, and I was like, okay, we're gonna be okay, kind of thing. But that's kind of like we should have something set when people, like what we're talking about this morning, these drugs and there are going to be a lot of people withdrawing and stuff like that. And how are we going to get people from here to there?
So you took this individual to Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Okay, that's just a great example, and thank you so much for putting up your hand. Because what we're dealing with in this community right now, like I said, is we're trying. We're gonna, and this kind of information and sharing is gonna help us become better. And to your point, yeah, we're not prepared for that. You know, in a detox, somebody to travel 8 hours, that can be a deadly situation. You could have been halfway between Ponton and Grand Rapids, and this person could have went into convulsions, and we could have lost that person. That's how serious that is. It's even awful if we have to drive 3.5 hours to Thompson. Somebody can go into cardiac arrest. Somebody can go into convulsions anytime. And I think that, you know, I'm glad the leadership is here because they are the ones who got me here. And that's why we're going to start with these crucial questions and answers that we need to do something more. And maybe when the new Health Center of Excellence is opened, we can find that funding. We can dig deep and make sure that we get that detox. Because if we look at our community, what do we need? Absolutely. Mental health, programming. We should be able to do that right here, right? And even with our treatment center, we need a treatment center in Norway House yesterday. And I've always said that. We need one here where we can have a partnership with inland communities. We can have a 30-bed unit. If we can really push this with the federal government and have some beds open for our inland community members and for our own community members. And with that, I think that with what you're talking about there is we can have that education and funding that if a person has that situation again, we have a facility right here. Because like I said, these drugs are coming and some of them are here already. And that's the scary part. So thank you for your question. Counselor, you don't get a question.
Yeah, I got one, or a couple.
Go ahead.
I have the housing portfolio, and right now, homelessness is a major issue. Lack of housing, and of course, people not, how do you say that, getting along in their homes. You know, anything, and some are alcohol related, drug related. So we have a lot of issues, but one of the things we're looking at right now is having a stabilization unit, like what April was talking about, for that person to go there immediately and have that person stay there until you know, their mental well-being and health is looked after, and they can go. You know, and the other one is having a group home or shelter for our homeless. Right now we have 12 two-bedroom at North End. That was intended for, that's the old isolation trailer. That was intended for when people have their homes renovated for a period of 2 to 3 months. So that was the, you know, we intended to use that. But now it's full of people that are homeless. All 12 rooms are filled to capacity. And so that's what we're looking at right now. That, the stabilization unit, the mental health, living, assisted living. We're working with people right now to try and get these buildings into our community through Bison or whoever is the quickest. But there are a lot of issues, but we're trying hard to, like the drug, it's going to be here. It's always here. And housing, that's another thing. We did shut down one of the homes that were raided last week or 2 weeks ago. Still boarded up. I'm not going to let anybody go in there. So we work, I have also the KSMA portfolio. I work closely with CFS. And it's good because I used to work there, and so I have a knowledge of that portfolio. So, But it's all intertwined. Everything, housing, policing, everything is intertwined. But I'll let James tell more.
Good morning. Thank you. I commend you, Gilbert, for what you're doing here this morning. You can feel that hope that's developing around here. So many of your presentation issues that you have, the decolonization of many of our ongoing issues. That's the same way we're talking with housing, right? Developing that decolonization methods, right? And also trying to work in that direction, and also coming up with new forms of new ways of communities, and one of the words that came up was sociocracy, where the people dictate who lives with them. We don't want to build another Niskaview type where those issues remain. No issues like that. So I'm very happy what I'm hearing here this morning. It's all good. So I commend you for your work here, and we'll chat some more. Thank you.
Egasani, thank you, Councillor Henry and James. I really appreciate that. But the reason, like I said before, it's not a personal thing. I'm here because of all the work Norway House does and continues to do, and I'll always say that. And I'm going to get a couple of other comments from Councillor Elbert. Would like to say a few words?
No, it's good. We're getting together as a community here, and we've started the process, like Gwen was saying, and of course that's really good to see, and that's what we want to see. And we've always try and prevent these things to happen, and I guess through where my background comes from is recreation, and we need to continue to support the recreation program to end all the things that come around the recreation program, like the open spaces, going out into the land-based way of living. Those are we're all intertwined in some way or another, and that's the most important thing. Is I always to identify that, and everything here, it comes to one thing as a community. We got to do it as a community, and I like to share a dream. I guess I've shared to many others. Before, I guess this thing when I was brought was it was a peaceful. I come in like a dream, I guess you can say. A dream. I walking down this road, and basically it's peaceful. Everything is peaceful, like we used to be. We were connected to the land, but I hear a distance noise coming from distance. So I went to that area. I was trying to figure out what's going on, and basically, when I came across this home, this elderly person, I couldn't recognize because this person was really sad. That's the only thing I could tell is the sadness in the face, in the body. But the noise was still coming around the home. Basically, I had to go check. But before I went, I asked if there's anything I need. I want some help. You want something? You want some water? All I saw was this sadness on this person, this elderly woman. It was really sad. So, walking around, I saw this elder's family. Children and their parents. But the parents were in the middle. You know, they're thinking they're having fun with alcohol, drugs, doing the bad things. And around these parents were their children, holding hands, singing this nursery rhyme, and thinking that their children, they're seeing their parents doing this, and they're happy to see their parents see. You know, we have to set that example. That's what the message was sent to me. We have to set that example as parents, as leaders, to our children, our youth, to walk a positive path. And that's where my coming back around this recreation. We have to set that example, either it's recreation, the way of life, the things that we do positively in the community. We got to do that. We got to set that example. Be our role models for our children and our youth. And then going back to that story, my dream, that story. I went around and all this, when I came back to this elderly woman, it was my mother. Happy now, bright. This chair was glowing as she lifted up into the air. Our generation past, our mothers, our parents, they want to see us set that example for our children, our youth. I wanted to share that story. Perhaps that it would touch your heart or some way or another, and I hope you enjoy the rest of the presentation here.
Thank you very much, Councillor Albert. These messages are so important, and I have to admire all the work and years that you and the other councillors put in the community. You guys are lifelong advocates for your people, and talking about our youth and our young people here, and some of our NADAP workers that, like I said, I was a NADAP worker. I had a chance to connect with a friend of mine last week, and I never talked to this individual for a long time. It seemed like a decade, but it was years anyways. And it showed me that talking to this individual again touched me right here, because this individual knows the community issues, stands by his principles, and still does to this day. And that that's character. And for somebody to continue on and keep saying that these are the right things. And I know now today, when I first met this man, he was saying the same things, and it's true. We got so much experience and knowledge in our community. Like Moore is here, and my friend Leonard Duncan is here. All the other staff that we see, and our young people that are safety officers. I'm very happy to see them here, because they're doing a lot of work themselves. They see a lot of the things that are happening in the when the lights go out and after a certain time. So I commend them for their work and everything that they're doing. I'd like to give the chance to Councillor Apatagan to say a few words on everything we're talking about and what we're dealing with in our community. I'd like to give him a few minutes, and then I'll call up Mr. White to come and sit beside me, and we can get started.
Thank you, and good morning, everybody. Councillor Anthony Apatagan. There's two Councillor Apatagans. I'm Anthony. So welcome. I'm glad to see everybody here this morning to partake in these presentations that are going to happen. One of the things that I talked about to the Chief and Council earlier before we hired Gilbert was the need to start working on our people. Through all the years I've been involved with as an employee and as a leader in our community, there's been a lot of structures, a lot of things being put up, which is good. But at the same time, there was a lack of working with our people, that we needed to provide support services, we need to enhance the services that we currently have, and we needed to support our staff. in dealing with our people. Every day I deal with reality, real things in life that happen, whether it's bereavements or crisis in the community with families, youth. That's what I deal with. So what I always like to say is, until you know the pain of the people, the happiness of the people, you don't know the people. Pagkatagiskenemat kitinim, ibisagentak, eminentak, egotagahusigiskenemo kitinim, tansi kigisiwitsihat. And this is the first part of the overall strategy that we have. We reached out to Gilbert to see if he was interested in helping us deal with the problems that we're currently facing. You know, we have a beautiful community, and I don't want to be known, Norway House, to be the drug capital of northern Manitoba. But that's what it's shaping up to be. And if you read the news, if you see the news articles that come from the RCMP, over the past couple of weeks, there's been three seizures of alcohol, drugs, guns, and with that comes some hardships, and that's the children. Children are apprehended because the families can't take care of them in that environment. So there's a lot to think about when we're dealing with some of the issues that we are having in our community. And we can go back and blame, but the reality of the matter starting today is we can make that change. As individuals, as residents of this community. I'm a counselor, but I also live here in this community. I have family in the community. I have children. I care about my community. You know, like all of us, we care about our community. But it's not a chief and council problem, what's happening. It's a community problem. We all have a responsibility to ensure that these things are not happening in our homes, in our children's homes, in our neighbor's home. We have to say something. You have to say something, you know, or else it'll continue. And I like one adage the former staff sergeant said to me, we cannot police the problem away. And he's absolutely correct. We can arrest everybody, we can throw them in jail, but the problem will continue because once you do that, there's somebody else that takes their spot. And it's just a matter of, it's the drug culture, right? It's how things happen in this world. Like if I went away tomorrow, wasn't a counselor, there would be somebody else taking my spot because that's how things happen, eh? And as staff members, you may decide to move on to a different career, somebody else will take your place. So that's how we are as humans, and that's human nature, and it's concerning that we're dealing with this right now, and it's not new. It's not new. It's been around for years. I've been around. I was an employee for over 34 years and a counselor for 8 years. I've seen the good, the bad, the ugly of this community, and believe me, with all this experience that I have, I talk a lot about it, and I challenge people, and you know, people challenge me. You know, they challenge me on Facebook. They challenge me everywhere, but that's a ploy. They think we're going to keep quiet by doing that. It's not going to work. And we have to be part of the solution. We can't be part of the problem. If we're doing alcohol and drugs as staff members, as leadership, nobody's going to take us seriously. They're going to say, well, why are you talking to me like that when I saw you staggering around or hosting a party at your house last weekend? You know, we have to put ourselves first before anything else that we do in this world, and because we'll be challenged. You know, people have, it's human nature to challenge, eh? So, you know, to be part of the solution starts today. I'm a big believer in educating our people. And I've heard this before, and you've probably heard this. Nobody told me this was going to happen to me if I continued abusing alcohol or drugs. Well, you have to go out there and tell them. As resource people, you have to be very upfront and say, what you're doing is harming your body. It's harming your soul. It's harming your relationship. It's harming everything, eh? You know, these drugs that are being manufactured, there's all kinds of stuff that goes in there, battery acid and whatever else they put in there to get that high. And we need to tell our people, exactly the way it is. We can't sugarcoat this. You have to tell it the way it is. People may not like you for that, but at the end of the day, that's the truth. That is the whole truth you can say. Nobody can come back to you and say, you didn't tell me this was going to happen. Well, we told you. You know, it's human nature to take your decisions as they come and be responsible for them. You know, that's just the way we have to look at this thing. So this is the first of very many workshops that we're going to be putting on. We have an individual that's going to be working with other resources to reach out to the community members, to our youth, to the schools, and start this process of informing everybody about the harmful effects of what's going on in our community. Because it's a social issue, right? And, you know, Councillor Henry talked about the housing component of it. Councillor Albert talked about the recreational and the spirituality of everything that happens. It's a problem that's not going to be fixed overnight. There's no way that's going to happen, and we need the staff, we need the community to be on board with this, because if you look back 10 years, did you ever hear of anybody having a handgun in this community? Think about it. Did you ever hear about anybody having a handgun? It's quite regular now that these things are happening, and if there's kids in the house, and we've heard all these horror stories where a kid managed to get a hold of the gun and did damage to themselves or to other people. We got to think, what can happen? And if you deal with reality every day, you know that things can happen in a matter of a second if we're not watching, if we're not careful. So I encourage you to be part of the solution. Let's deal with this issue that's facing our very beautiful community. We have beautiful people in our community, our youth. We always talk about our youth. Let's think about the youth and make sure that we are there for them. What I'd like to see, and I've talked to a few of the counselors there, is when somebody comes for help, that help has to be almost immediate. Because if we don't grasp that individual, they're going to go back to the same thing. But we don't have a facility that can address these issues. So one of the things that I'm going to be pushing for with the help of the other chief and councillors is let's get our own treatment center. However it looks like, let's help our people. We've done a lot of infrastructure in our community. Let's switch that mindset and let's have a facility that can actually help our people. So I know I speak a lot, but you know what? I'm passionate about what I do. I love my community. I'm born and raised here, and I'm going to leave this world from this community. And you know, until I leave, I'm not going to keep quiet about anything I see wrong, because it's if you don't say anything, it's going to continue. Think about it. You know, don't accept anything that anybody offers you to operate an illegal business out of your house or your vehicle or anything, because now you're part of the problem. And we don't want that, eh? We want to be part of the solution. I want to thank the RCMP safety officers, emergency services, and all the staff that are in our Cree Nation. You know, keep up the good work. Keep up the good work. You're doing the best you can with whatever you have, but at the same time, there could be more solutions. And we start here today. We get involvement from the community members. That's going to be our goal. And the community, there's more good people in our community than bad people, guys. You know, and I think if we approach it the right way, we'll get results. We'll get results. Never lose hope. Never lose hope, and let's not lose hope on our people in our community. Egusani, thank you for listening to me, and I'm looking forward to the presentation by Corey. He's on his way. So thank you for listening, Egusani, and ask him it now. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Thank you, Councillor Apatagan. Councillor Swanson, would you want to say a couple of words before we get to our next presenter? Would you like to say a few things? Going once, going twice. Okay, Councillor Swanson.
Tanche, tanas komunista kita tamskat na tanas cuma kagi sepak. Thanks to Gilbert for inviting people and doing this. I know as the councillors mentioned, there's been some discussions and some works that we've been looking at in regards to this issue in the community. Of course, you know that things are not going to happen right away, but we are working on some aspects of dealing with the violence, dealing with the drugs issue, the drug dealing, and you know that with Councillor Henry and the housing authority, there'll be some issues that we'll be dealing with the housing. There'll be, you know, we don't want to be punitive in the sense of punishing everybody. Definitely the drug dealers will deal with, and the people that are coming in to the Norway House illegally to sell or illegal drugs, those ones will be dealt with harshly and they will not be accepted in the community. And whichever way that we need to have them removed from the community, we will. In regards to the houses or the areas where the illegal activities are taking place, we will start to find out and we will be addressing those. But I wanted to talk a little bit about building resilience in our kids as well. You know, I think it's important that we teach them. You know, I was thinking, I was talking to some of the educators and some of the people that I used to work with, and I remember when we were in school way back when, that the teachers used to talk to us all the time about what's right, what's wrong. No, it wasn't just our parents or grandparents. The teachers did this as well. Now you don't see that as much. You know, because people are scared that if a child goes home and tells the parent something, that the parent's going to come and get upset at the teacher. You know, that is something, managay tonwak, it takes a community to raise a child. You know, that is something that we have to go back to be able to tell the kids what's right, what's wrong. You know, just recently there was a letter that was sent by the school division from HBO in regards to the issues they're having with students not staying in the class. And they're hanging out in a bush, a lot of these kids. So obviously, as Anthony says, it is a community problem. It's not a chief and council, it's not a school, it's a community problem. So I think as a community, there are certain things that we have to work on together, tamama at tuskatamak. And I know as leaders, you know, it's not just the chief and council. I think it takes all of us. We have to be leaders in different capacities. And those people as Komana that are out there and not happy with what chief and council are doing, you know, we ask you to be leaders as well. If you want to be a leader, and show it in a positive way. I think everybody has to do that, because we have to show our young people. We always talk about the young people. You know, we have to, if we expect them to be leaders in the future, we have to show them how. And we start today. We don't hopefully let them think that they learn along the way. We have to show them. So with that, I hope, you know, we take something from here. I hope we move forward and start working with the young people. I think a lot of this work is that we have to build resilient young people. My elder, my mentor, the late Albert Tate, used to always say this to me. Poko tamaskawigapoy hayagago skatsak. You know, so that's what we have to do. Egusane, thank you very much, Gilbert.
Thank you very much, Councillor Swanson, and thank the council for their comments. It rings true. Nothing is perfect, in our community, and we all know that. We all have our kind of complaints and this and that, but you know what? We have to start somewhere, and having these workshops, and people are absolutely right. I want to start drawing on our own professional people we have in this community. We're going to have workshops. I want the people that are sitting here today, the young people and the people that have been around and working in our health division, in KSMA, I'm going to start drawing you guys out because you guys are the leaders. You guys have to be up here and you guys have to start presenting because you are the true professionals of what's going on in our community, and that's what we have to do. And never be scared to talk about the issues, because I will stand beside each and every one of you every step of the way. And then that's just a fact. So before we have a delicious, delicious lunch coming, we're going to have chili, we're going to have stew and bannock that I made. So I'm just kidding. Everybody's running for the door. I'm only kidding. But it's going to be a great lunch. I'm going to call up my friend Mr. White over here from the RCMP to come up and speak a few words. And then after that, we'll take a little bit of a break before lunch. And then everybody, please come back for 1 o'clock. Corey is going to be landing any minute, 15 minutes. The plane's going to be here. He's going to set up for 1 o'clock. We're going to get going on his presentation. You don't want to miss that. It's a fantastic presentation. It kind of mixes in with our community and what I've spoke to, and it'll all start coming to fruition about what this first step is all about. So without any further ado, my good friend, Mr. White, welcome.
Thank you very much. Tansy, I'm actually working with a Cree tutor, so it's actually going really slowly and I'm not picking it up very fast. So that's the only Cree word you're going to hear from me, and I'm sure I did it wrong, so I'm sorry about that. I hope nobody minds if I sit while I speak. I'm a very practical man and I never know what to do with my hands if I'm standing up. And so it just allows me to sort of speak more freely if I could sit. So if nobody objects, I'm just going to sit while I speak. So my name is Staff Sergeant Aaron White, and I'm here to learn, just like you're here to learn. I'm here to take in other people's perspectives and learn from this information that's being presented here today. Before speaking, I know that some of you may have a complicated relationship with my uniform and what it represents. I understand that, and I respect that place that you're coming from, and I'm learning more every day, so I appreciate your perspective on that. I honor and acknowledge that I'm here on traditional territories of Cree and Métis people, a place located in Treaty 5 territory. I appreciate this invitation to speak with you, and I appreciate all the time that we get together and all the learning that I'm getting to take in. I'm excited about the potential that we're discussing here today. The ideas that Gilbert's putting forward, the action that I've already seen in the community action group that I'm currently sitting on, that desire to create change. It's exciting. And now it's supported by this community, this nation's leadership, that you're on the cusp of doing something large and great for yourselves. I appreciate that. The idea that we're tackling substance abuse and its causes in a way that's detached from charges in court and all these other things, that we look at it as a sickness in the community that we're trying to heal as opposed to something that we're trying to charge and chase away. Too often, in many communities that I've been in, the way out is always described in that way, that we'll charge it and we'll put it in jail, but that doesn't suit anybody. It's necessary in some cases, we have to do those things, but for a community to heal, we have to deal with the sickness. This positive language that's being presented is so important. I'm incredibly thankful to have the opportunity to hear from Gilbert, and that we're going to get that chance to listen to Corey coming up next. I look forward to learning from that perspective. My own experience with drugs at work, it's very similar to what you're probably going to hear this afternoon. I've worked in coordinated police work in mid-sized cities out west in many different types of communities. The cycle of poverty and addiction, the substance abuse, it's all very similar. The vulnerable people that are exploited by addiction. It's sometimes even more sad in a place as beautiful as Norway House The root causes of these social problems made even worse by those lingering effects and anger regarding residential school and colonization. And I understand that I don't know enough about these things and I'm trying to learn about them. And I respect that. I know that for some of you, you're reminded every day by my uniform and even by the symbols of Canada of some of these things. But I am here as a person who's interested in the health of this community, and I hope to work with you on it. It is very complex here, the issues that we're facing, but it's even more destructive than it can be in other communities. My experience is the drug trade is driven by outside forces, even here in Norway House. People from away see an opportunity to exploit and recruit local people. They promise money and power, and those people that they recruit are attracted to the idea of belonging to something, to have something to do. They see an opportunity for money or for status, a way out of poverty. They're being lied to, they're being taken advantage of, but there is always a local aspect. An outside force comes and recruits locally so that they can get that foothold inside your community. They're attracted, your young people are attracted to this lifestyle because it gives them an opportunity for wealth or excess or even just having more, until they wind up in jail for it. Then inside jail, they have to wind up belonging to those same people, those outside forces, in a way now to survive, not just because they're going to be making money this way. They fall further into that lifestyle until they're released with less options than when they went in, because now they have a criminal record and now they can't find employment. Even when they come to the community, they're asking for jobs. Sorry, you used to be a drug dealer, now we can't help you. What options do those people have? We have to create outs for people. We have to allow them to grow and become better. But without those options, they go back to the trade that they've known. They go back to the drugs, they go back to the violence. Jail isn't a way to deal with addiction. Having worked in both federal and provincial jails, I can tell you that very few people in jail thrive. It isn't a place of health. It's a place of survival. While some people do the work on themselves, it is a hard place to make any meaningful corrections to yourself, cut off from family, support from your community. Dependent on relations with others in jail that you need to survive, that may mean that you have to stay in that gangster lifestyle. Norway House is a nation of great opportunity. The opportunity for strong services, the opportunity for strong leadership. It's a place that we can make meaningful changes to things. Us meeting and discussing this holistic approach to dealing with a lack of opportunity, to dealing with a lack of services, that's a good first step, and we need to carry that momentum forward. There is an opportunity for members of this community to take back their friends and family from the destructive influences of outside people who see a chance to make money. There's an opportunity for us to take control inside your community back from paternalistic relationships with a government that gives you a lot of promises but then doesn't answer their phones. Every brand of political party is guilty of that. Every government agency, even the one that I represent, I'm also guilty of it. We can do better. I look forward to being in support of your community initiatives, not speaking from a position of knowing better or trying to tell you what to do, but having a community design an approach and then me support your community's needs to bring that approach up. Be that through interagency groups like we're working in now, strengthens relationships between divisions like the health division or with child family services, any of those things, any advocacy, community programs that we can get started. I'm looking forward to seeing what the community can come up with. Over the last 10 days, a value of close to $100,000 of drugs and money has been seized here in community. And that sounds like an astronomical amount, but it's just a drop in the bucket as to what's going on. Inside all of those seizures have been handguns, sometimes with magazines that I haven't seen since I was in the military overseas. There are local people that are associated to all of these files. There's always a local element. But behind those people is people from outside of the community that are using it. Like parasites, they come in, they take your money, they take your health, and then they leave. You're no better off for it. Many people in the community are rightfully protective of their young people. Obviously, we love our families and we want to take care of them. The problem is that when we turn a blind eye to low level inside the community drug dealing and all these other things, we wind up in a situation where it escalates. Now all of a sudden that young person has a handgun. Then they move on to being in debt to somebody. The problem is that it moves on from that point. If we can identify a conduit for the community at a low level that we can get these people help, then we can get them outside of that system. There's no hope in it. A trend here in Norway House over the last year has been the use of young people to mule drugs as well as guns. What this does is, because they're young offenders, the courts don't sentence them harshly. So they collect these terrible lifestyles while they're young people, and then there's no hope for them once they turn 18. They're thrust into the system. All of these things are not even starting to address the issue of addictions, the people that are actually addicted to the drugs that need it. What help presently do they honestly have if they need help with their addictions? This is a beautiful community where everybody has good intention. I have yet to come across somebody who doesn't believe that they should be helped. What we can't seem to identify, even going back to the question, is how we get them to that help. And I believe that that's the opportunity that we're presented with here. These are your young people. These are your young people that are involved. This is your future. It's the future of this nation. I can only imagine the heartache that this causes, because if it was my own wife, Christy, or my kids, Tristan and Peyton, I don't know how I would approach this subject. So I have a little bit of understanding, and I'm trying to seek out more, but I'm willing to work with the community. I'm encouraged to see all you people here saying that you want to help and get people away from these things. Not talking about putting people in jail, not talking about charging people, talking about how we deal with the health issue. I believe you're on the cusp of an opportunity to make large changes to your community in a healing way. And I'm absolutely humbled to be here and be your partner in that process. To be a person on the sideline learning and helping where I can. I appreciate it. If there's any questions you have for me regarding law enforcement or drugs here in the community, organized crime, I'm willing to take any that you have. Sure. So one of the drugs that he brought up in his presentation was this concept of a drug. It's called Down, and I'm very surprised to hear that it's on the way here to the community. Having dealt with it over in Alberta, it's a destructive force. It's absolutely working inside a tent city in Grand Prairie with transient people. I saw absolutely devastating effects from this drug. To be honest with you, and I don't mean to be a person who speaks in terms of fear, but I've yet to see a person come out of that cycle of addiction inside that type of drug. That I don't know what it is about that mix, but it will have devastating consequences here in Norway House. It will at least cost you friends, neighbors, children. It's an absolutely terrible drug. We have seen some purple meth, which is another drug that I had only seen in a city. That's been here over the last year, only in limited cases, but it was surprising to see it in such a small community. Your local drug seizures of choice recently have been related to crack, as well as there's been methamphetamine and some pure cocaine, but the majority of it at the moment is crack cocaine. And absolutely another devastating substance to have floating around your community. Like I said about the seizure of the guns, it's very interesting to me the types of firearms that are being seized in these raids. It's not normal. It's associated to organized crime. There's a nexus of outside influences in British Columbia and other places that are bringing guns and drugs into your community because they see an opportunity for money. That's what it is. It's just money. They don't care. They want the money that's here in this community. And you need that money for your community. You don't need it for them in BC to support organized crime. I was very interested to see the types of handguns that are coming out of these.
I'd like to thank Staff Sergeant White for spending some of his time with us and letting us know exactly what the job they're doing. And like he said, $100,000 in drugs, handguns. Are you kidding me? In our community? And now with Down and all these other new substances coming, we have to be ready, as we talked about before, and I think we are, because we have to take this absolutely serious. And like I said, we'll speak to this every month if we have to, and we're going to get everybody involved in that. And I appreciate your time, Staff Sergeant. Let's give him a hand for coming down today. So let's, Corey should be here for 1 o'clock, so let's take a bathroom break, wash our hands, and then there's going to be a nice lunch served. I'd like to thank you all for coming again. You are the backbone of this community. You guys, I praise you every day for what you do. Nagasani, and let's have a great afternoon. Thank you so much. Okay, we're going to kick off the afternoon. I'm going to call up Staff Sergeant Aaron White to do a presentation and some comments about his presentation this morning. And then we'll jump right into my presentation, and then we'll close it off with a Q&A session.
Tanze, good afternoon, everybody. So some of you already listened to my presentation this morning. I think you'll find this afternoon to be quite similar. But one of the questions that came up this morning was a question about the difficulty to obtain search warrants when it comes to drugs that are reported inside the community. So the courts have made it so that privacy, even for people that are accused of crime, is like, the standard is way high, way, way, way up there. So if we get an anonymous tip that there's drugs inside a house, we can't get a search warrant on something like that. It's too soft for the courts to deal with. It has to be very specific, and it has to be something that's very recent. So it's not enough to know that somebody sells drugs out of a house. We kind of have to know what the drug is, how much is there, and when it was there. So it makes it to be quite a high standard to go into people's houses. That runs into some difficulty when the community's trying to deal with the drug problem, where they know they can point at a house and say, that's a house that sells drugs. And then we'll know, we agree, we'll say, yep, that's probably a house that sells drugs. But unfortunately, fortunately, the way the system is designed, it's meant to be hard for a police officer to go into your house. It's supposed to be that way. So because of that system, a lot of times here in Norway House, I can hear frustration in the people when they call to report that there's drugs somewhere, that it's not being acted upon. There needs to be something called corroboration. There has to be a couple different ways for us to figure out that there's drugs inside a house, how much there is, what the drug is, who the people inside are. And then on top of that, I also have to be concerned about the safety of the person who's telling me about the drugs. So if an elderly person points at a house and says there's drugs inside that house, I don't want to put that elderly person in danger by letting that house know that I'm acting on the information from that elderly person. So unfortunately, I have to find ways to hide that information inside the warrants. So it's not a question of whether we believe you when you make these reports, because we do. And there is always a very good likelihood that what you're telling us is true. But it's the fact that there is a high standard required before a police officer is allowed to be inside your house, which is a little bit different than when you call for help. When you call for help, we have to determine that people are safe, then we have the authority to go inside the house. But when searching for drugs, we're not able to do that based off that. It's a very high threshold. Okay, so just to jump off some of the comments that were made this morning with regards specifically to drugs, the concept of down was brought up. this mix of several different drugs that's being sold, the fear that it's going to be coming into Norway House. This is, like I mentioned this morning, it's a substantial concern. If your kids, your neighbors, your friends, people in your house are going to be using this drug, it's going to cost lives here in Norway House. This is not a safe thing to be playing with. It's something that I encountered when I was in Grand Prairie, and I don't believe I ever saw anybody successfully get away from it. It was just all the systems that we had were just designed to help people. They couldn't be used properly because of the size of this addiction. So that concept of down, if you hear those words being thrown around, you need to get that person help, because that's just it's not a thing that they're going to make it through, especially not here. Outside of that, we see a lot of crack. Crack has been the drug of choice over the last couple of weeks, like I mentioned this morning. It's been close to $100,000 between material, money, and guns that's been seized. And that's a substantial amount to everybody in the room. If you gave me $100,000, you would change my life. But that's been in the last 10 days, it's been put off the road. But that's not even a drop in the bucket of what's actually going on inside this community. It's just, there's an astronomical amount of this out there right now, and we're working on it, but we need to get ahead of it as a community and start dealing with it from that health and holistic perspective, rather than just waiting until we can arrest people for it. We have to get ahead of that. Outside of the crack, we have isolated amounts of meth. We do come across it. Generally speaking, methamphetamine's a drug that you see consequence of. You don't necessarily seize it all the time, but your emergency services, such as ambulances, social workers, your police officers will be dealing with people that have strange behavior constantly, and that's a consequence of that methamphetamine use. And so that's what generally you see instead of the meth itself. But we do see isolated methamphetamine here. Outside of that, there's also pure cocaine that we come across, but that's kind of a prohibitive drug because of the amount of money that's associated to it. It's expensive to use, so crack is predominantly what the drug of choice here is. So when we're gathered here today and we're talking about the potential for community response to these things, it absolutely warms my heart to see all these people here and interested in doing those things, to get out ahead of these issues. The concept of waiting to jail it, to charge it, to chase it out through that system, that's just going to cost you your young people. That's how you pay for that. The only way that we can deal with this in an effective way is to deal with it in a health perspective, to look at it as a community concern, to bring all of our collective power together in order to say, no, we're not interested, we're going to do it a better way. And I think that's what the message that Gilbert is bringing here, is that we have the power in this community to have better systems, to have better leadership, to have more access. We can do those things if we bring ourselves together. So Norway House is a nation of great opportunity. The opportunity for strong services and the opportunity for strong leadership. Strong community programs centered around community. Just us meeting here today and the other work that are going on in the advocacy groups inside town, this is us starting the process of addressing these concerns. This opportunity is for members of the community to take back their friends, to take back our children, our young people. This is an opportunity for us to say no to external people, gang members, who want to reach in like parasites and take your health and your wealth away from your community. This is your opportunity to take that back. It's your opportunity to finish a paternalistic relationship with a government that makes a lot of promises to you and then doesn't answer their phones. This is your opportunity to take control of your nation. And I'm humbled that I get to be in this position where I get to speak to you and assist you with this. I'm your partner in all of these things where I can be. Many people inside the community, they have a hard time with these concepts because it's hard if you have a young person that lives in your house that's involved in the gangster lifestyle or that's involved in drugs. It's hard to make those choices to intervene, to stop that, especially when they start with such a small amount. Maybe it's a very small involvement with a local gang. Maybe it's just a group of people at that point. The problem is that for that young person, it escalates, it gets bigger. Eventually, it's not just they're hanging together for protection, it's somebody has to have a gun. And then they lost some drugs, so they're indebted to somebody in Winnipeg. It escalates. So while it's inside your house and you're saying to yourself, oh, they'll grow out of it, or it's not as bad as it seems, the problem is around the corner, there's a much bigger issue for that young person. And that's where we have to get ahead of it as a community. And I'm not saying that we have to put the young people in jail, and I'm not saying that we have to charge them. I'm saying that we need to get people in programs and work together as a community in order to address that. There was, for a long period of time now, since I've been here for about 18 months, what we've run into is the external gangs, your larger gangs in Winnipeg and other places, they're using your young people here because they can't get sentenced in court to long periods of time. So the gangs will actively go to recruit young people so that they can avoid court. But what that does is it keeps the young person from educating themselves. It keeps the young person from being with their family. It keeps them from developing positive networks. And then they turn 18 and they have no options except for the gangster lifestyle that they've come across. Those people are exploiting your young people. I mentioned this morning that I can't imagine if that was my own family, like my wife Christy and I and our kids, Tristan and Peyton, if that was my children, I would be mortified and I wouldn't know how to act either. As a parent, it can be very difficult to make those decisions. But we as a community, as some of the counselors said this morning, we have to act in a way, it takes a community to raise the children. It does. And I think that Norway House is a community that cares, and you have the opportunity now to do that. We can bring things together and we can take care of these children. Jail isn't a way to deal with addiction. Having worked in both federal and provincial jails, I can tell you that it's not a place where people thrive. It's not a place, it causes some self-reflection for inmates, but it's not a place where you can make real work on yourself inside. It makes people realize things, but it's not a place where you can change. It's a place of survival. And it's a place where if we send our young people there, it's a place where they become even more entrenched in that gangster lifestyle. So charging, jailing, it backfires. It comes back to the community and it's smarter the next time. Norway House is a nation of great opportunity. We absolutely have a chance to do things differently here. None of these things that we're talking about, specifically with dealing with the drug dealers and the gangsters in town, it doesn't assist the person who's actually struggling from the addiction of drugs either. The counselors this morning brought up treatment programs. There was a question asked about access to treatment programs. These are places where we can make great strides. We can start to help people sooner by identifying those gaps and creating processes as a community, working together. And I think that's what Gilbert is trying to start here, is that we're going to start to build those pipelines, access to programs and those types of things. I'm encouraged to see you all here saying that you want to help your young people get away from these things, to help the community. It's that seed of hope that we can do something with. I believe you are all on the cusp of the opportunity to do something much larger, to heal the community. I'm absolutely humbled to be here as your partner in that. Thank you very much. I'm willing to speak on any questions that you have regarding drugs in the community or organized crime. You good? Thank you.
I'd like to thank Staff Sergeant Aaron White. Can we please give him a round of applause for coming and sharing the goal and vision of some of the experience and what the RCMP are trying to do with partnership and inclusion within our community. Okay, this comes to the afternoon session. I'm going to start on my presentation, and after I finish my presentation, we're going to send it out for some questions and answers. As community members this morning, We heard some really good feedback and some really good questions from our tables. And that's what it's all about, is if you don't understand or if you want to ask a question or have a concern, that's when you bring it forward. That's how we look at it, and we get that information and we move forward. So, as I said, this new presentation, it's called Walking as One. And this was created about 3 years ago. When I was working in Winnipeg, I was watching Mr. Corey Guest do a presentation to a First Nations group. And Corey had everybody kind of mesmerized and wanting more information of exactly what he does. Corey, and I'll get to that a little bit, Corey has been a paramedic on the front lines of Winnipeg most of his career. And Corey now is the educator for the Winnipeg Fire Paramedic Service of Winnipeg. And he's done hundreds of presentations. And now this partnership with Corey, we did a few presentations in Winnipeg to some Indigenous groups that are aging out of the program, and basically information about city life and what it entails and what to watch out for. And of course, what's on the streets real time, because Corey's information is what's happening in Winnipeg today with the substances. So the brave actions of a few positively impact the many. And I say that because I said that to the people here this morning, that the people that are here today are going to make a difference. I don't care if there was 5 people, 50 people, or 500 people here. The message still has to continue. And how it's going to continue is the people that were here this morning and afternoon will talk to their family and maybe colleagues about information that's new. And this presentation is dedicated to all our Norway House Cree Nation members who we lost to violence and substance misuse here in Norway House, Winnipeg, and elsewhere. They're never forgotten. And just so everybody knows that, these topics that I'm talking about are very personal to me. My family, we were going through a lot of heartache in the last year, losing, community members and personal family members of mine. And everything that I'm talking about today and what Staff Sergeant talked about is basically the trauma, the pain that we carry as Indigenous people, but as individuals. Everybody here has their own story, their own trauma that we carry from residential schools, and I'll get into that shortly. So I'd like to start off by saying, welcome to the Speaking and Information Series, Walking as One. I'm very honored to be back home in my beautiful community of Kiniseo CP and paying it forward to the people who are the true backbones of this community, the frontline and essential workers that are here today and all the people that work within our community. I say to you all, Ekosani, and I mean that because I'm going to talk a little bit about my personal journey as well. When I first came to Norway House 25 years ago to come home, I wasn't a well man. I was still using, I was still drinking, and I wasn't in a good place. But I know this community works, and I know this community helps people, because the person I am today with my education and being a former leader and being up here today is all because of the people here in Norway House who have helped me along the way and believed in me, and that's what makes our beautiful community successful. So we got to remember that, and I owe everything that I am today to the community, and that's why I'm here. This partnership I created 3 long years ago in Winnipeg with Corey, and we talk, and Corey is an educator, like I said, and we talk on the subjects of substance misuse, opioid, and meth, just to name a few. And he's done hundreds of presentations all over Winnipeg and in Canada, and I'll speak to 2. Corey and I did a presentation in Winnipeg, but in April, we got flown down to Vancouver. And the reason why that presentation is so significant, I'd like to ask if anybody heard of Hastings Street. Can you raise your hand? Has anybody heard of Hastings Street? Okay, there we go. So Hastings Street is a street in Vancouver, the Lower East Side, where they have 2 blocks on both sides people living in tents, cardboard cities, in the alleys, and there's 1 to 3 people dying every day in that specific part of Vancouver, to opioids, to meth, to overdoses, suicide. 1 or 3 every day. And the significant part about that was when me and Corey went to go visit Hastings Street, and I've been there before looking at the programming, we met with a young man who's a former addict who now runs that safe consumption site. And what a safe consumption site is where they allow people to come into this establishment who are using hard drugs intravenously to come in and use these drugs under watch in case they overdose or die. And that's what that safe consumption site is. So we went into the back of this establishment, and they had a big tarp. It was in the alley. And the tarp, there was about 9 or 10 people that were using intravenous drugs. And one guy was slouched over, and he had a needle sticking out of his neck. So the staff had to revive this individual and make sure that he didn't overdose right there. But the other part I want to talk about is that there was a lot of Indigenous people that we saw on Hastings Street in that area. And I asked that gentleman, I said, you know, I'm an Indigenous person. I said, I see a lot of our people here. And he goes, 5%, less than 5% of the Indigenous people that he saw or deals with, only 5% are from BC or the Vancouver area. 95% of the Indigenous people that are on Hastings Street are from Alberta, Saskatchewan, and Manitoba, and some from Ontario. That kind of made me think, wow, 95%. So there's a lot of people finding havens in Vancouver because of the climate and where everything is there, so they can go there and escape the trauma that they're trying to deal with in their lives. So that was significant. And the thing I want to talk about is, and what Corey always says is, we're all in this together. You know, and that's true with the community here. I can't turn away. No one can turn away. We all have to say, we're all responsible for the state of our community, each and every one of us, as we try to move forward and help individuals. So my part of the presentation is focused on substances which are used to cope with trauma due to colonization, assimilation, residential schools, intergenerational trauma, and the 60 scoop. And like I say here, I use my personal stories for examples, and these are all true stories that, you know, still affect me today, but I'm dealing with it in a very healthy and positive way. The main speaking points for my part in the presentation are residential schools, as I talked about, alcohol and the negative effects on our children, families, and community, and I will speak a little bit to that. Alcohol has been the #1 killer of our Indigenous people in the history since European settlers came here 300 years ago. We used to have a population of almost 20 million Indigenous people in North America. And now in Canada, we're barely over 1 million. So you can understand that due to colonization and the introduction of alcohol, and this has been a devastating partnership for our people. After colonization started in the US, it was basically wiping Indigenous people out for their land and resources. And that's why you see what's happening today in America and in Canada, right? So let's bring that back home to a community perspective. We're still dealing with alcohol as the major, I say anyways, kind of starting point of our young people. And I know I started drinking at an early age. I think I was 13 years old. And I was with friends and everything else, just like what we hear in our community here. And so that basically started me off on a path of dependency and learning how to deal with my trauma, with alcohol, and with drugs, and with other, you know, coping mechanisms. So that's another thing that we have to remember. It's not just the hard drugs, and that's the main point of this presentation, but the alcohol, we got to remember that's still a bad substance that's causing a lot of problems. Drugs, violence, and the current state of our community of Norway House. As Staff Sergeant talked about, and what I mentioned is that Down is in Winnipeg, and it's killing people right now. There's a gentleman that was on TV, killed his partner and his son from using this drug. And this drug is heroin and fentanyl in most batches. And this is deadly. This is nothing that you can fool around with when our young people, even in Winnipeg, are at parties and they're, having fun, and then somebody says, hey, try one of these or try this. We're all too willing to do that because that's what alcohol does to you. It creates a false sense of security where we think we can try something and it's okay, and we're cool. But doing that has killed many people. So that's why I'm saying that we have to be careful of what we're doing. And violence is escalating big time in our community of what we know about. And that's why I dedicated this whole presentation to the people that we've lost in our community and in Winnipeg to violence, to drug overdose, and other things. Because it's too important for our community to continue this way. And the reason why I'm here today is because, like the professional people all around here and the young people sitting here today, we can make better choices for tomorrow. Like, I have children, I have grandchildren, and I don't want any harm to come from them or your family. But we have to stand together and say, are we going to change? And I think we can. And let's talk a little bit about the mental health concerns. And I heard a lot about that already in the last morning and this afternoon already. The mental health concerns, we need training dollars. And we need more staffing. We need a facility where we can actually get our people that are having, how would you say that, episodes of mental illness concerns. And I was just talking to a lady who had a good question this morning, and she said, I had to drive somebody 8 hours to get help. 8 hours. And then within any time of that 8 hours, that person could have had a heart attack. They could have went into convulsions. Anything could have happened, and that person had to drive 8 hours to get that person some help. And that's why I'm saying that we need more training dollars. We need more facilities in our community that are going to deal with what's happening in Norway House today. A treatment center. We've been talking about that for a long, long time. Maybe if we start pushing this agenda forward, we can have a treatment center that has a partnership with other communities in this region where they're having the same problems as we are. Having people not having spaces. Some people are waiting 6 months for treatment, for a year, and some of them don't make it. And that's a reality. So we have to make sure that we push for what we need in this community. Domestic violence, alternatives to violent outcomes. And that this one is near and dear to my heart. I mean, it's here, it's in a lot of communities, and it's because of all the situations of colonization, residential school, the trauma, the hurt, the pain that we're unleashing on other people because we're hurting. We don't know how to handle those traumas, and we don't know how to ask for help sometimes. So that is a realistic a topic that I'd like to discuss. I don't want to see that anymore. We have our young people with young families are being destroyed from alcohol and drugs, and then violence comes after that. And there was a study that I read, if our young people have this violence brought onto them at a young age, it affects their whole development. It affects their understanding of how to, they take on education, and it affects them later in life as well. And these are proven facts. So these are some of the topics these are real, these are raw, but these are topics that we must have a discussion on today, tomorrow, and a continuation if we want to become a stronger, healthier Cree Nation. And I know we do. And I know some people are probably saying, whoa, that's too much to handle. But I'm not saying everything in one day. I'm just saying that these are something that we have to talk about and learn from. How do we become more inclusive when it comes to working together in a healthy, collaborative way so we can become a stronger Norway House Cree Nation organization for the well-being of our members today and tomorrow? Does anybody understand when I say about how do we become more inclusive? You guys do. Okay, what I mean by that is within the umbrella of the Norway House Cree Nation and all the divisions that fall under that, we have to be stronger. We have to have better communication. We have to work better in a collaborative way and share information for our people. We can't keep having one organization and another organization not meeting or having that disconnect. We need to do that in a better and healthier way. And I've been talking to some people this morning and this afternoon, and they totally agree. We have to make sure that just because we're working in a building, and some people are working in another division, we're all part of the same umbrella. So remember that. We're all part of this process together, and we have to show that respect to other co-workers in different divisions. So what does all this mean? What do all these issues have in common? Well, it starts with the devastation, like I said, of colonization, the settlement of settlers in this country, assimilation, the integration into a lifestyle that, as we know, is Canada now, that was set up through the European. This is not who we are as Indigenous people. We don't fit into that because it's not us. And that's what that means. And misrepresentation or falsification of who we are. This has been going on for 300 years. The settlers basically started falsifying who we are as Indian people so they can justify of taking our land and taking our resources and saying they don't have the capability of taking care of themselves. And that's what the government of Canada continues to do to us today. So those kind of falsifications are still out there and are alive and well, believe me. So that's why I'm saying this today. Oppression and cruelty, and that's the last point of that, is because when you do oppress people through residential school, child family, 60 scoop, all of these things come into play because the government of Canada and these organizations like residential school was cruel. It was cruel, and it started off the intergenerational effect, which is now spilling into the second intergenerational effect. And that's really tough to understand, but it's a reality. And we got to talk about that. Okay, and on our Indigenous communities, which has led to ongoing self-destruction as we now see today. We've become a reactive community instead of a proactive community in almost all aspects of programming and care, which is no fault of our own. So what do I say about that? And when I say no fault of our own, and like I said, we're dealing with situations within our structure that we're trying to deal with. And you're going to get to that in a few minutes, and you'll see that. So here's how I dealt with all the trauma, excuse me, for 45 years in my life. My mother died from alcoholism when I was 10 years old in Winnipeg. I became an intergenerational survivor. I had to deal with that. How do you tell a 10-year-old kid, your mother has just passed away from alcoholism? How do you deal with that? There was no help for me back then and my siblings. So that trauma was a deep scar in my heart. So that is what I'm talking about, is how do we deal with this as an individual? And everybody's different. And I heard that today, and that's true. We're all individuals. We all carry our pain differently. We all show our pain differently, but we all have it. And it's the way we let it out is the way that we have to look at. Is it a positive way or is it a negative way? So I say in this one here, and this is what helped me, I say let's flip that script of colonization and all the traumas that we're carrying as individual Indigenous people. My metaphor is this: instead of carrying all these traumas in our lives, which makes it hard to breathe, to live for that matter. And what I mean by that is that when we are sad and we carry pain of a lost one, of a lost loved one, or we're dealing with addictions, we carry that on our backs. Just like we see every year in the flower packing contest. Use that in your mind as an example. All of these things are weighing us down as individuals, all the trauma, addictions. So how do we deal with that? I say let's stop carrying these tremendous burdens and stop using all sorts of self-destructive coping mechanisms such as alcohol, drugs, sex, violence, just to name a few. Because for me, when I was 10 years old, and this burden came on me, and I used to feel like it's my fault. I don't know if I can handle that kind of pain. And I don't think I would have if I didn't get the help of the Norway Cree Nation and my elder, who I miss to this day, who's passed away. It was Gilbert. Gilbert was a light of my life in helping me become who I am today, because he's seen that young boy inside that was dying inside as 10 years old. He said, you got to heal him now. And I did that, and I'm still doing that today, and that's why I'm here. So we all have to remember, this is just an example. This is my example. For each individual here, we have our own way of healing and dealing with that trauma. So let's start with flipping the weight of colonization from our backs, our souls, our hearts, our minds, and our spirits. And metaphorically, like I said, throw it down. What do those ladies and men do when they can't handle the weight of that backpacking, flower packing contest? They throw it down, and then they stand up again, and they go, and they're all excited. And that's exactly what I did with all this trauma. I just said, I can't carry it anymore. I threw it down, and I stepped on it, and now I own it, and I can stand free. I can stand freely and get that help I need now and move without feeling that weight of the world on my heart and my soul. And that's what's making me get through all of this pain. And I see some fellow workers that I worked with 25 years ago, and I see some younger people here. I'm just absolutely excited that everybody's here listening to this information, and I hope everybody takes a little bit of the information of what I'm talking to in your own personal lives, and we can see where that goes from there. So now let's take control of that, like I said, and as a way we never thought possible. Suddenly, we are in control to move freely, and knowing we oversee changing our narrative in our personal lives. This new thought process has saved my life, and I thank God for that. I really do. And the Creator, of course. It doesn't matter what religion you are, you believe in God, you believe in the Creator. There's just a higher power out there that we all can seek, and it works. I tell you that right now, because once you start talking and feeling that, you feel better every day. And somebody told me sometimes it's only every hour we deal with this. And I know we just came out of COVID, and that was really hard on our community, and we're just getting out of there now, but we're still feeling the effects of that. So we got to remember all of these things that we're dealing with and continue to move forward. Okay, this leads us into the conversation of social determinants. So the social factors in our community I'm talking about is resources. Councillor Henry was here talking about housing this morning, how much of a challenge that is in our community. That's one of the social determinants. When we have a 2-bedroom house and 10 people living in there and six young ones, and there's not sewer pickup or water, those young ones can't go to school for 2 days out of a week. And then you times that by a month, that's 8 days, and you times that by a 10-month school cycle, that's 80 days that our young ones miss school, in some cases because we're lacking in a lot of resources. So the social determinants that I'm talking about is spreading out through the community. And when our young people are missing school because of that, it affects the whole household, right? And we got to remember within our communities, some of our households have that burning light inside, the home fires. And I think people heard me talk about the home fires before. What does that mean? Some people have the home fires that are burning brightly, and everybody has the resources and doing well. But on a lot of our homes in our community here, that flame is just a little flame now because of the lack of resources, the overcrowding, and everything else. So that's just some of the stuff that we have to keep in mind. I mentioned we're all fall under the umbrella of social determinants within most, if not all, First Nation communities within Canada. The question now becomes, how do we as a community move forward? The answer to this question is a complex one and has no easy answer and must be worked on differently in each community, as we are unique in language, in our culture, our religion, and in a geographical sense. Like in our inland communities like Binabonbi and St. Therese, they don't have the luxuries that we have. A road that we can go out all the time. They're struggling more with a lot of, excuse me, a lot of the social determinants in those inland communities. And some communities only an hour out of Winnipeg, so they have better access. And I spoke to that when that young lady drove 8 hours to get somebody some help. So that's what I'm talking about. Okay, so there's no easy answer and worked on differently, and we're all unique in geographical sense. So is unity, is it trust, is it confidentiality or respect? Believe it or not, it's all of the above. Because when we as community workers within all our divisions, such as childcare, healthcare, education, social, and leadership, we all must take ownership and responsibility for the current state of our community today. So we can't point fingers and say it's all leadership's fault. It's a combination. And like I said before, this is the structure we're dealing with in Canada because of because of assimilation. Remember that. We're trying the best that we can, but together and having presentations such as this, it gives us that opportunity to speak freely and to create new opportunities and programming and thought process that we can do. When I see these young ladies sitting in front of me, we have new questions. Like, you know, people want to say, I want a question, I want an answer to this question. That's how we get change done. We all have to speak up and raise our hands because we're all in it together. This is our community, from you to me to everybody around here. And that's what it's going to push us forward. We are here to serve the members of Norway House in all aspects of their lives, good or bad, without judgment or prejudice. What that means is that we know when we take on these roles as healthcare workers, healthcare providers, security, child family, health division, we have clients coming to see us. We can't say, oh, I can't see this person because this, because of that. We have to give our community help no matter what. And that should be our people coming to us and not being afraid to raise their hand and say, I need help. But I don't want to go and get help because I'm scared somebody's going to talk. I'm scared there's going to be no confidentiality, so they leave. And sometimes we never see them again. So that is what I'm talking about today, is we have to break those cycles. We have to keep that confidentiality and show our young people and our people in general, come and you're going to get that help, and you're not going to hear a damn word about it, because that's what our young people are scared of, and some of our people there's no trust there. It's broken. But we're fixing it. We can fix it, and that's how we fix it today, is become better people through information and by asking questions and moving forward, right? Okay. Okay, where am I here? Okay, one recommendation, and I heard this already. I mentioned this morning, and somebody already told me that there is a group. And supposedly I'm part of this group, and I didn't even realize it. But these ladies were nice enough to point that out and make fun of me about it, but that's okay. Okay, so this is just an example of what one of the examples I made. It's called CARE, Community Advocacy Revisiting Community Engagement. And this would be a continuous working document, not just having meetings, but a continuous document that we have the information and everything moving forward, that if something comes up in 6 months, we have it right at our fingertips and we can add to it and make it even better and stronger, so it keeps on evolving. This would be a continuous working document, as I just said, and it'll grow as our community's needs grow. Okay, we can get a person who hand selects the group from all departments and have a community member at large, meaning that it's not just professionals in there. I want a community member sitting there that knows what's going on in our community. A community member that sits on these committees and says, well, what about this? What about that? I know what's going on in our community because I'm a community member at large and I see it every day. That's very important to have that voice at the table. This selection will not be biased, or will have community professionals who must work together with respect and confidence, because it's not about us. It's about the well-being of our community members of Norway House, who need to feel safe and have the confidence to reach out or raise their hand for help at any time without any worry about people saying things. Let's never forget our members who fall into the category of murdered and missing Indigenous women and girls and two-spirited, or are missing and murdered Indigenous men. The ones who got swallowed up by the cities of Canada, who transitioned from their First Nation community to the city. What I'm alluding to is that our First Nation men, our women, our families, two-spirited people who live their lives in their First Nation and go to the city and in most cases are not prepared. I'm going to stop it there for a second, and that's what I want to talk about. We're not prepared. We have our young people that are going out to Brandon and Winnipeg for educational purposes, and I've seen it before. And that's great. It's good to have opportunities, but we got to remember we have to have our young people prepared not only for the education piece, but what's going on, what awaits you in Winnipeg. You know, it's a fast life out there. There's a lot of gambling, there's a lot of bars opening, it's just crazy. So when our young people leave and they go to university, I'm glad they're doing that, but they got to make sure socially they're prepared and understand there's lots of huge cracks that anybody can get swallowed up and fall into those cracks. And that's important as well. Many times, it's right to the social departments for help. The inner city of Winnipeg, where I grew up, the North End, Point Douglas area where gangs, addictions, violence becomes the escapes. Because it's easy to fall into those traps when you're kind of overwhelmed in the city, right? Also, in many cases, prostitution becomes a reality because of drug abuse, poverty, homelessness, and other social factors. Because major cities across Canada have workers, businesses, and systems in place that waits for no one. The economy of Winnipeg and the cities are an animal. 24/7, 365. Businesses are going, shutting down, going. They don't wait for somebody to say, I don't have a place to live. I lost my job. There are programs, but that city continues. And if you're not ready and prepared to tackle that, it's easy to fall. And when you do, that's when you start looking at what's available. How do I cope with that? Because major cities across Canada, okay, I said that already, sorry. And most business owners, along with most of the general public who live in these cities, don't care or have any realization about First Nation people who struggle in society, or why our current state within Canada is such as it is today. I personally seen this over my years of living in Winnipeg and working there. One major factor is that Canada has been building this economic empire since 1867 when Canada became a country, right? When they built this country, residential schools were introduced and we were put on the res. And they wanted to build this country of Canada, and they did that very successfully, but they forgot one important aspect: us. Okay, with European Canadians since 1867, while First Nation people were disbanded and put on a reservation to hopefully vanish into the history books. It's a known fact that we were put here and hopefully would never have to deal with us again. We'd die off, we would just become a memory a footnote in one of the history books, and that's the truth. But we're still here. Within the last 60 years or so, First Nation people started finding their way to the cities, pardon me, and seeing if there was any part of this new system that was meant for them. And we all know the answer to that question. Today in 2022, we as First Nation people are kicking down these barriers and announcing to Canada that we are still here and we're not going anywhere. So work with us in establishing a Canada that acknowledges that we are First Nations people of this land. And it's time for Canada to respect not only us, but the treaties that were signed in good faith with the Crown. The time for us is now, First Nation people, to say enough of the land going missing, stealing, along with the resources. Sorry about that. And First Nation people to become true partners in this community. In Canada 150, I talked to Phil Fontaine directly. He was in Winnipeg, and he said, we missed our chance at Canada 150 when Trudeau was in Ottawa. We have to be true partners in this country, meaning it's just not English and French Canada, it's the indigenous people as well. It has to be a tripartite country, because if it's not in our Constitution of Canada, then it's going to continue the way it is now. We're going to be wards of the state. We're going to be looked at as children of the Crown, that we can't take care of our own resources or manage ourselves. And that's another fact. Okay, we missed that opportunity. You got that? Okay, natural resources. I want to talk about that because we always mention that Canada is the third richest country with $33.98 trillion. And that's just of what they found so far in this country, $1 trillion. Okay, and if we as First Nation people, and we're true partners, and we got 3% of that money from the own natural resources within our territories, the gross domestic product, we'd be able to do everything we're doing now, healthcare, schools, housing, that works and fits our people and our community's needs. And that's the way we'll take pride in our own destiny and not feeling like wards of the state. Come on in there, young ladies, have a seat. Or children of the Crown. Because our people feel like everything from first breath to death has been and is dictated from Canada. And that's not self-determination or reconciliation. That's oppression or persecution at its blatant form. So the reason I wanted to talk about these issues along with Staff Sergeant is that we got to understand as Indigenous people, colonization, assimilation, residential school, intergenerational trauma, the 60s scoop, all of these layers were made to put us down, keep us oppressed as Indigenous people, and not give us the right at our own self-destiny within this country. Man, the last residential school only closed in 1996. And did you know that we had Indian agents? This is for the younger people. We had Indian agents in this community. We had to go and ask permission to go off of our reserve. We had to get permission. Can you believe that? And that's not too long ago as well, within my lifetime. So all of this information is so pertinent, especially if you never heard of a lot of the topics I'm discussing. This is your history. This is our history. This is what we all need to know so we can start understanding all the trauma and everything that we're dealing with today as Indigenous people. And I'm very, very proud to see a lot of our youth here today, along with some of our veterans of the healthcare system that's been here for a long time, and they're dear friends of mine, like Bessie Falster and everybody that's here that spent their life working for this community and wanting to make things better for you, the young people, the grandchildren, the next generation. And we're going to continue to do that, and part of that is doing this today. So that's the end of my presentation. Along with that, But I wanted to throw it out there for some questions and some comments. If we don't understand what we're talking about, let's start discussing it a little bit more. That way, that's the only way we can move forward. So with that, I'd like to say thank you very much for listening in today. You can get up and have a coffee or a pop, but I want to have an open discussion about some of the stuff we talked about today. Does anybody have any questions, or anybody want to talk about any of the comments that we discussed here today? Okay, so Joni she has a couple of questions, and that's great. Let's listen to what she has to say.
I have a question. In your presentation, you don't touch upon prescription drug abuse.
Pardon?
Prescription drug abuse. There's a lot of our youth that are using gabbies, and there's nothing at all for them. Like I work with a lot of young people, and they are honest young people, and they tell us what they are abusing. So gabbies is the main concern in our community.
Well, like I said, I'm really happy that's why I'm putting it out to the audience, and that's why I'm putting it out to our community members. You guys are the professionals. You know what we're dealing with every day. And Joni is one of the workers that dedicated her life to community wellness and working with our youth. That's a question that you probably just answered yourself. What would you like to see happen with that?
To tell you the truth, I think we need to bring some doctors that are specialized in withdrawal management and detox. We need someone in our community here.
And I'm glad you brought that up. I forgot to mention, everybody, that we need a few things in this community for sure. I know I touched on the treatment facility. We need that. But also what Joni's talking about, we need to have a detox 24 hours that can help our young people immediately. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, there's so much drug abuse in our community. A lot of our young people are using crack, and they try to get off the drug, but it's hard to get the help in our community to help them with their withdrawals.
No, I agree. And, I'm really happy that I don't know if I mentioned this, but I'm really happy that I'm working with the Chief and Council. They met me in Winnipeg and asked me, Gilbert, can you come home and help us with some of these issues in our community? And I'm glad to see everybody here because I'm glad to be home. And and that's what we're doing today. We're telling our leaders what we need. We're telling our leaders that we need to help our young people get better treatment, get some detox options ASAP. Mental health is another one. And I can tell you right now, since I've been home, it breaks my heart. I have my own brother in Winnipeg who's dying because of drugs. And that's hard for me to see. And I tried to help as much as I can, but you need that individual to seek out that help, right? And in our community, as Joni was talking about, that becomes a problem with somebody raising their hand. Somebody saying, I'm addicted to either crack or gabbies. Can you help me? And like I said before, a lot of our young people are scared. They don't want to be outcast or labeled in our community, right? So we got to try to break that. We got to make sure that we're here for everybody in our community, right from our youth to our older people that are still using and abusing alcohol. We have to have a system that works for everybody immediately. So what would be your recommendation? Treatment center, detox center?
We need a treatment center that will have a detox and withdrawal management in a unit in one place instead of separating them. They need to be in a detox, and then they can go to the treatment after they're done their detoxing.
Yeah, and that's true, because Joni, can you speak to this one point that I want to make? What happens to some of our that have to wait 6 months to a year for treatment? What happens?
Well, when they wait, we start losing them because they turn to harder drugs, harder prescription drugs. And when we send people for the methadone options in Winnipeg, we're just giving them another way to get free drugs, and they get lost in Winnipeg. We never hear from them again. And it's best that we have something in our community so our people don't start dying with too much drugs. And when they go to Winnipeg, they're homeless. They don't have anyone in Winnipeg. I only have one success story. I had sent a man to methadone, but he's recovered. He has a good job. But the other ones, they are on the streets because they turn to harder drugs. They turn to meth. And it's hard for some of them are in custody in jails because they're homeless and they have nothing to fall back on when they're in Winnipeg.
And I'm so happy that we're hearing these comments. And you know why I'm happy? Because we're finally bringing them out in the open. We're talking about them in a very truthful way from our heart. We're talking about them because it's real. We're not sugarcoating anything. We're not trying to say things are going to get better. We're talking about the true facts. And how do we get things better? Is we start with today and start pushing for number one, treatment center, detox center. Maybe a detox center should be part of the new health center of excellence. I don't know if it is. Does anybody know if it's in the plans? No, there's, so I'll find that out. I'll find that out because this is only the first series of the presentations. But the next presentation that we're going to be bringing forward, I want to bring community members forward. Because no one knows our community better than ourselves, right? So we know who's suffering. We know what families need that help. And we need teams to go in there and start saving our people and our families. Because without that, we don't have a Norway House Cree Nation. And we have a beautiful, beautiful community here. And I am so happy to be back. And I can tell you one thing. A couple of colleagues of mine in Winnipeg, when I heard and I told them that I was coming back home, why would you do that? And I said, because that's my community, and I owe everything that I am today because of this community, and I have to pay it forward. And that's what I'm doing here. No other reason at all. And I'm happy to see, like I said, everybody here. And let's have a few more questions. Do we have any questions from the younger crowd? Maybe any kind of question that you want, or raised any kind of issue that you think we can do better, or what would you like to see? Don't be shy. Anybody just, grab the mic. There we go.
My issue, well, not an issue, but like something that is real big in the when people go and get help at the clinic and the doctors don't typically, they typically just answer it with pills if you have migraines or just the simplest, I don't know how to explain it. Even for anxiety and antidepressants and stuff, they just mainly want to lean towards pills. They don't even try to figure a different way about it, and that could lead to people being addicted to antidepressants, anxiety medications, and stuff like that. So that ties into this, right? Because they get codependent on that.
I think that's a beautiful point. Thank you so much for saying that. And I think that with that being said, what the information is going to be here and people are writing stuff down is maybe that we need more training. Maybe we need more understanding, right? When it comes to our young people going to the clinic. And, like I said, instead of kind of just saying, oh, well, blah, 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 let's say, can I talk to you for 15 minutes? What's really going on? Is that what you're saying?
Not necessarily. I think it's more like when I brought up the issue about, like, for me personally, it was anxiety. So I wanted in us, not necessarily anxiety medication, but something to help me with it. And they were really pushing on antidepressants, anxiety medications, and I was like totally against it because I could see what that does to people. And I'm not saying it's for everybody should be against it, but I'm saying for me that's not a route that I wanted to go down. And I don't know, they have different resources for it, right? So it's like, why do they always go to pills?
Great point. And I think that we have tons of health professionals here where they are going to take that information, and that's why that comes to the working group. And I'm glad you brought that up. Thank you so much. That's very important. And there was somebody else that wanted to have a comment.
Hi, I'm an educator at UCN, and I actually had 10 women that have children come up to me and ask me to help them to get their spirit back, and they wanted me to find somebody to take them into the church and get their spirit back. And I didn't know where to go, and then I said, okay, I'll go and talk to these few people. Like, I'm an educator. I don't know where I can go to get you that help, because they actually were honest and told me they were into gabs and meth and crack. And they wanted to get out of it, and they wanted to be better for their children, and they wanted their children to come with them. So I tried to do that, and the people I talked to didn't respond back. But you know, I know we do need that help in this community. We need a mental health facility, and we need a detox center.
Well, I thank you for that comment, and you know, it's a beautiful thing. And you're not just an educator. You're somebody in this community that's very important to remember that. Every time we talk about ourselves, don't sell yourself short. Whatever you do in this community, you're helping the Cree Nation, and always remember that. Anywhere from what Austin does to, you know, educators, to our professional nurses, we are all part of the solution. So always remember that. You know, you're not just an educator, you're a very, very big part of this community. And what you just shared, it basically are people that in our divisions are listening. And, you know, and I would say reach out again. Reach out again. When you reach out one time, if the door shuts, don't shut the door. Don't walk away and say, I don't, and you keep knocking. You have the right to keep knocking on that door till somebody opens that door and says, I'm here for you. Please, don't give up. Oh, hi, Bessie.
I just want to, the girl mentioned, that young girl that mentioned about well, you know, you can be addicted to the prescription drugs for anxiety, because I came through it. When I lost my parents, like, you know, I pretty well had to go to the doctor and ask for something to help me cope with the anxiety that I had. And you know, that happens a lot in our community. There's a lot of panic attacks that, you know, they just come from nowhere. And we got to realize our surroundings can affect that. And what you discussed about the residential, the residential era that we had, and plus the child care, she's still my friend. and you know, I work for the justice, and I start to see a lot of things happening. On my part, like for myself, I'd rather not see anybody come back to the justice system, so I try to help them out by trying to help them talk about their issues. And we lack the mental health, as where therapy can have, there can be therapy for this young girl instead of her taking the medication. Because it took me a long time to wean from those pills after I got addicted, but I thank God that He was there for me. And that's the other thing, you know, when it comes to religion or it comes to your belief system, don't undermine or try to intimidate anybody. You know, we have one God that we all serve, that we all say we serve. And that's the only way we can help our community, is to be examples to how God wants us to be. And God is our Father. However you call Him, He's still the ultimate resource. And let's not forget about that. Without Him, I'd be nothing. I wouldn't be here today. And with that, like, you know, I'm more into this mental health issue. And we need to support our own families when it comes to schizophrenia. That's a big issue, and it's caused by drugs. I know that it runs in my family, and we need to understand it more. We need to be educated what it's all about and how to help our young people. Agani pa ko.
Yeah, I can say, Betsy, she always has good comments, and she's absolutely right. And you know what? Everybody sitting around here, you know, it's nothing to be down about. All this information is good. It's really good because we're sharing. We're finally opening up, and I commend these last few comments. Good for you. That's what it takes to make change, is to finally raise your hand and say, you know what, this affects me as well. And that's going to make the difference in our community. And I tell you right now, like I said, people are listening, and we're going to make changes. We need a health treatment center here. We need a detox. We need mental health resources. And we need other after hours. Halfway house. Yes, and a halfway house. I sit on the board as well, everybody, on the John Howard Society of Manitoba. I'm on the executive board, and that's a place in Winnipeg where we try to help people that are transitioning from incarceration back into society. And I sit on that board as well, and I'm very proud to do that as an Indigenous man. Because as we all know, or maybe we don't know, our rates are skyrocketing right now, and Bessie can attain to that, is that it's like high, and not only for our men now, our women are getting up there as well with our incarceration rates in Canada. So these are very, very good questions, and remember these things. I'll take a few more questions, and then after that, I'll let everybody go. So a couple more. Let's hear from maybe some of the health professionals, and if they have a question or a concern, it'd be nice to hear what they think.
Okay, I just wanted to make a comment in regards to the patients that we see coming through public health. A lot of the times, we do try that understanding of what's going on in their lives. But sometimes we also have to be firm in what we're doing to try and help them. And one of the things, just from personal experience, nobody's going to change anybody. It has to be you to take the reins or the bull by the horn, because nobody can change you. Only you can change yourself. You have to take that initiative to make that change, whether it's positive. Hopefully it's positive. So one of the things, like I said, just from experience, alcohol, I know, has affected our community members a lot. So I started drinking just before I turned 18, 2 weeks before I turned 18. And then because of alcohol and how it hurt me and my family, I quit at the age of 21. So I've been 31 years sober now.
Let me do the math here.
And that's one of the things of making positive change. And the reason why I did what I did was my mom always commented and said, once you have kids, you always have to be there for them. That's what you look at in regards to bringing up your kids right and making those right choices. If you want them to make those right choices with you, that you have to be a role model to them. I just wanted to share that.
Well, thank you very much, Flora. I appreciate that. And like you said, it's an individual choice, and there's help out there. And like I said, sometimes you might not get the help you need, but come back, knock again, and I guarantee somebody will open the door. One more comment. Has anybody got a comment on the back table? I see Roland looking at me saying, "Give me the mic," but there he goes. Don't want to put you on the spot there, bud.
Okay, I just want to say, we got all these places where they go get sent out to go, what do you call that, treatment and stuff like that. How many years has it been going on, eh? And how come there's no change to it? Change different things, try different things to see. If it's not working, why keep doing it, eh? So.
No, that's a very good comment, and you're absolutely right. And that's why we're doing this today. And like I said, this is just going to be the first one of its kind. If it's not working, people, please speak up. Come in to talk to your leaders. Come and talk to the health professionals and say, we need something else. We need something in this community. We need to change our train of thought. If it's not working for us, how can we tweak it? How can we make it better? That's going to help our young people. That's going to help our people that are dealing with a lot of different issues here, spirituality and everything else. So that's a good comment. Thank you. That's it. We're done.
Hello.
Hello, Sarah.
My turn. I heard so much about a treatment. I know in our community we need a treatment. We are dealing with an addiction of all kind of an addiction. And us workers that work at the health division there, we try to teach our clients what an addiction does to them, right? We listen. It's not just an addiction that they have. We're carrying a lot of issues in our life. We need to start looking at ourselves. We're the ones that need to heal ourselves. We need to speak out and find a way of helping yourself. I coordinated the woman gathering for how many years? For a long time, 13, 14 years. This is the first time this year I couldn't go. I was told because of COVID. In the meantime, there was a lot of gathering going around in our community. I was kind of really disappointed because a lot of women or the family come to our gathering. The teaching that I wanted over there was to teach first it was a woman gathering. I wanted to teach the woman that we need to start standing up and start healing ourselves. We're all good. We all have the gifts. We all have the wisdom. And we're not to be afraid to speak out. How I did that, I started my own healing journey. I'm a survivor of domestic violence. I'm a survivor as my mom died when I was young. I became a young mom looking after my siblings. But we cannot stop doing what we need to do because we have to stop feeling sorry for ourselves. We have to start going and do things. Yes, we're all affected with alcohol and drugs. I have grandkids, I have my kids, they're all drug addicts, they're all using alcohol. How can you work there? I can only help myself. I can only change me. We cannot change nobody. The treatment starts in our community. That's where the problem is, in our community. We can search everywhere. But the problem we have is here in our community. Do you want to change? Do you want to quit? That's your choice. But we all have to try to stand up and say enough. We've been crying for treatment. We've been crying for a billing for us, community wellness, to help our people. Confidentiality, we try to keep that confidentiality when our clients come to us. We fight. I fight. I'm not going to share to anybody with my clients. So we have to start believing in ourselves. I had to. I used to be so scared to tell people my story. I carry that shame. But we all have to give, so get up and do it. Help yourselves. And I'm the youngest worker of NADAP worker for how many years? I'm the youngest woman in the band office, the band worker. I'm 73 years old. I'm still standing up, and I'm still going to speak out. There you go.
Well, that deserves a round of applause right there. And you owe me $20, Sarah. So basically what I want to say to everybody, even when I close off and I ask Bessie to come and do a closing prayer, and I'd like to commend our safety officers and our RCMP that stuck it out and listened to our community and being involved. And I really appreciate that, because it shows that, you know, they want to do what's best and help us along the way. But what I want to say to everybody here, if you're going to take one thing away from this whole day, even though our presenter didn't come and he'll come again, is that we're showing now that we're starting to raise our hands. We're showing now that we're talking about what's in here. And we're showing now that we can communicate with each other without feeling that shame. I shared very, very personal stories of my childhood, of what's happening today in my family, in my life, and it makes me a stronger person, because I'm trying to build a better life for myself, even as these things are going. So there's help out there. I want to get everybody, please, give yourself a round of applause, please. This is great that you're all here and talking like that. So don't run away. Okay, Bessie, would you mind doing a closing prayer? And then after that, everybody, please, let's stick around for finish off these donuts and these drinks and just mingle amongst yourself or take a drink home. But be safe, take care of yourself, and thank you again for listening to me for many, many hours. Thank you.
Heavenly Father, we thank you, Lord, for this day that you have made. We thank you, Lord, for your love and your mercy that is upon us, Father. And Lord, we thank you for this seminar that we had listened to, and it gives us more for us to look at our community. And today, as we come together in agreement with everyone here within the health field and our whole Norway House Cree Nation staff, Lord, we come together in agreement, Lord, that you will help us through this. Lord, that we want a better community, harmony in our community, Father. We ask thee in Jesus' name, Lord, you see every situation that's arising from every young heart, Father, and every heart in our community. We ask you that you will touch them, Father, that you will heal them. And first, that we need to understand each other and to work together in unity. We ask thee in Jesus' name, Lord. And we ask you to bless our chief and council, our mayor and council, and we ask you to bless the RCMP that are doing their work, and our band, our First Nation officers, Lord, that they see a lot of things, and they need you, Father. And every person that has been trying to help with the people's issues, Lord, and we ask you that you will strengthen them more, give them more knowledge. Give us more knowledge, Father, I ask thee in Jesus' name, and the things were discussed, Lord, that they will go through in the name of Jesus. Whatever we ask in your name, we shall receive in your word, and we thank you and we give you glory, and bless everyone that was here today. And Father, I lift Gilbert. Lord, I was made to find options for the community, that we need these health centers, Father, and you will provide the people that are really needed. In Jesus' name, amen.